The grand hall shimmered in a sea of red and gold, a perfect testament to a traditional Chinese wedding. Over 300 guests filled the room, their cheerful chatter echoing off the ornate decorations. At the center of it all stood Jieming and Xiaoling, he, a successful 32-year-old architect, and she, a radiant 30-year-old dentist. To anyone looking, they were the picture of perfection, the stars of a real-life fairy tale. But beneath the glittering surface, the first cracks were already beginning to show. Jiming's mother, Chen Lanfang, pulled a cousin aside, her voice a sharp whisper against the festive noise. "Look at this," she hissed, gesturing subtly towards the dowry display. "It's modest, isn't it? For a dentist's salary, you'd think they could have managed a bit more." She leaned in closer, her expression sour with disappointment. "My nephew's wife, her family gave them a car and an apartment. This barely covers the banquet." She sighed dramatically, ensuring her relatives understood her deep dissatisfaction. The comparison hung in the air, a poisoned dart aimed at the new bride. Meanwhile, on the other side of the room, Xiaoling's mother, Li Mailan, was conducting her own quiet rebellion. She surveyed the banquet tables with a critical eye, her lip pursed, their cutting corners as she muttered to her sister, "Look at this menu. And the seating. Why are our most important relatives stuck near the back? It's a clear sign of disrespect." Her passive-aggressive comments floated around the table like a bad omen, her displeasure a stark contrast to the celebratory atmosphere. She felt her family had been slighted, and she wasn't about to let it go unnoticed. The tension wasn't limited to the mothers. Jieming's father, Lin Jieming, a retired teacher known for his proud and rigid demeanor, stood with his arms crossed, a stone wall of a man. He refused to entertain any of the minor complaints filtering back to him, believing everything was done perfectly, according to his standards. Across the room, Xiaoling's father, Su Wenhui, a naturally cheerful businessman, tried his best to be a bridge between the families. He smiled, he offered toasts, he attempted light-hearted conversation, but his efforts were met with polite but firm indifference from Lin Jieming. The two patriarchs, the new heads of a united family, pointedly avoided speaking to one another, their silence stand off a chasm growing between them. The celebration roared on, a symphony of clinking glasses, laughter, and music. But for Xiaoling, the noise was beginning to fade. Amid the chaos of toasting relatives and the forced smiles, she realized Jieming was gone. He wasn't at the head table, nor was he mingling with guests. A knot of anxiety tightened in her stomach. She excused herself, her shimmering red dress a blur as she moved through the crowd, searching for him. Her heart pounded a nervous rhythm against her ribs. Where could he have gone on their wedding night? She checked the restrooms, the outdoor terrace, the main lobby. Nothing. Then, she noticed the door slightly ajar down a quiet, dimly lit corridor leading to the staff rooms. A sliver of darkness beckoned. Pushing the door open gently, she peered inside. The room was a small, cluttered storage space, and there, sitting on an overturned crate in the near-total darkness, was Jieming. His broad shoulders, usually so straight and confident in his tailored suit, were slumped. He had his head in his hands, and a sound she'd never heard from him before reached her ears, the quiet, choked sob of a man trying to hold himself together. She froze in the doorway, her breath caught in her throat. He looked so utterly alone, so broken. She took a half-step forward, ready to rush in and comfort him, but something stopped her. She watched, hidden in the shadows, her heart aching for him, unsure what to do or say. Just as she was about to reveal herself, a faint light illuminated his face. His phone was ringing. He wiped his eyes hastily, his back still to the door, and answered, his voice thick with emotion. "Wait. Yeah, it's me." There was a long pause as he listened, his shoulders tensing. Xiaoling held her breath, an unwilling eavesdropper to this intensely private moment. She could only hear Jieming's side of the conversation, but it was enough. I don't know." he finally said, his voice barely a whisper, cracking with despair. I'm standing here, in the middle of all this. And I don't know if I made the right decision. The words struck Xiaoling like a physical blow. The right decision. Was he talking about their marriage? About her? The joy and love that had filled her heart just moments before evaporated, replaced by a cold, flooding tide of doubt. Her perfect fairy tale shattered into a million pieces. The smile fell from her face, her expression crumbling into one of shock and utter heartbreak. Her dream wedding had just become her worst nightmare. What happens now? What did he mean? Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications because you won't want to miss what happens next. When I was 10, I showed my father a test paper with a perfect score. He glanced at it and said, "This is expected. Don't get arrogant." A few minutes later, my younger brother Jieming, who was 6, had shattered a vase. My mother rushed over, not to scold him, but to comfort him, making sure he wasn't hurt. My father just laughed it off. I stood there, watching, and learned a quiet, hard lesson. Love in this family wasn't something you shared equally. It was given freely to one, and demanded as a duty from the other. 7 years later, I won a prestigious national architecture competition, a huge honor for a 17-year-old. But on the night of the awards ceremony, the seats I had saved for my parents were empty. They were at my brother's parent-teacher meeting. So I walked onto the stage alone, accepted the heavy trophy, and forced a smile for the camera. By then, I understood. My achievements weren't meant to earn their love or pride. They were just expected. Today, my Xiaoling and I are pulling up to my childhood home. We've brought expensive gifts, a gesture of respect. It's a traditional house in an old neighborhood, filled with memories I've tried to forget. My mother, Chen Lanfang, greets us at the door, her smile wide and welcoming. But my father, Lin Jieming, just gives a formal nod. No hug. No real warmth. His approval has always been a distant shore I could never quite reach. Inside, the walls are a shrine to Jieming. Photos of him as a baby, a child, a teenager. Of me, there are only a handful, tucked away in corners, almost as an afterthought. My mother fawns over Xiaoling. "Oh, what a beautiful bride. Jieming is so lucky to have you," she exclaims, holding Xiaoling's hands. I watch Xiaoling relax, her initial nervousness melting away under my mother's charm. She thinks she's been welcomed. But later, as I am helping my dad with something in the yard, Xiaoling passes the kitchen. She overhears my mother talking to a neighbor, the dentist. My mother says, her voice laced with disappointment. It's not like she's a real doctor and her family. Well, their background is nothing special. Xiaoling freezes, the casual cruelty of the words hitting her like a physical blow. She takes a deep breath, schools her features into a neutral mask, and walks away before anyone can see the heartbreak in her eyes. At the dinner table, the performance continues. My father launches into his usual critique of my career, architecture. He scoffs. "Such an unstable income. I told you to become a government official, a secure, respectable job." My mother chimes in, "Your cousin just married a doctor, a real one, a surgeon." Her parents are so proud. I feel Xiaoling's gaze on me. She is waiting, hoping I'll defend her. Defend us. But I just stare down at the rice in my bowl. The familiar weight of their disappointment presses down on me, and I say nothing. In this house, my silence has always been my shield. Tonight it feels like a betrayal. There's an empty chair at the table. My brother, Jieming, is absent. He's so busy with his new business ventures. My mother says, her voice a little too bright, "He's going to be a big boss someday." My father's jaw tightens, a muscle twitching in his cheek. It's a sore subject. The golden blazoned here. Xiaoling and I exchange a quick, knowing glance. There is a story here, one that is being deliberately hidden behind a wall of excuses. The tension hangs in the air, thick and unspoken, as we're finally getting ready to leave. A wave of relief washing over me. My phone buzzes. The caller ID flashes Jijen. I step away from Xiaoling into the quiet of the hallway and answer. His voice is a frantic whisper. Brother, I need your help. He sounds desperate. I need to borrow 20万 yuan. It's for a huge business opportunity, a sure thing. Please, don't tell mom and dad. They wouldn't understand. I hesitate. Jijen, that's a lot of money. He cuts me off. Please, brother, you're the only one I can ask. You've always been the responsible one. The one who fixes things. The responsible one. The words echo in my mind, a label I've worn my entire life. I hang up and walk back to Xiaoling. The forced calm I'd maintained all evening has shattered. She can see it on my face. Who was that? She asks, her eyes searching mine. I try to smile, to brush it off. It was nothing. No one important. I take her hand. Let's go home. But as we walk out the door, I can feel her gaze on me. She knows I'm lying. The secrets of this family are no longer just mine to carry. They're starting to weigh on us both. My mother always said, a doctor's daughter must be perfect. I was 8 years old, and the piano keys felt like 100 tiny judges for every wrong note. My motherly melodious voice would slice through the air again. My fingers would tremble, my eyes would burn wouldn't shed tears, but I would play. Again and again, in the doorway, my father would stand, a silent, helpless shadow. He never intervened. He just watched. Years later, I was 16 and discovered a love for drawing. I wanted to join the school art club, but my mother declared it a waste of time. Focus on your studies, she commanded. It was my younger sister, Xiaoling, who became my co-conspirator. She was only 10, but she slipped me a sketchbook and a pencil, whispering, "Draw when mom's not looking. I'll keep watch." That small act of defiance was our secret bond, a little world we built away from our mother's control. It was our secret, until Xiaoling decided she didn't want to hide anymore. She was 18 when she dropped the bomb. She was dropping out of college to become an artist. My mother exploded. "You're throwing your life away." Xiaoling, brave and fiery, shot back, "I'd rather be a failed artist than a successful puppet." She stormed out, my father scrambling after her, calling her name. I was left alone in the living room, comforting my sobbing mother. I became the good daughter. Xiaoling became the free one. Even now, I still don't know who made the better choice. Returning home always felt like stepping back in time. My husband Jieming and I pulled up to my parents' apartment, a modest but tidy place that hummed with a familiar tension. My father, Su Xiaoling, greeted us at the door, pulling us both into a massive, warm hug. He was all jokes and laughter, immediately making Jieming feel like part of the family. But over his shoulder, I saw my mother. She stood back, arms crossed, her eyes conducting a silent, thorough evaluation of my husband. The inspection had begun. Every move Jieming made was under her microscope. He poured tea for the elders, and she frowned. "You should have offered to your father first, not me." He presented the gifts we brought, and she picked them apart. "These supplements are the cheap brand. Don't they pay architects well?" Jieming, ever polite, apologized over and over. I tried to defend him, but my mother cut me off with a wave of her hand. "I'm just making observations. A mother has the right to know who her daughter married." My father tried to break the tension, telling a goofy story and laughing loudly, but his laughter dissolved into a violent, racking cough. It went on for too long, a dry, harsh sound that sucked all the air out of the room. When it finally subsided, he waved away our concern. "Just a cold. The weather's been changing." But I sighed. Then, he was thinner than I remembered, with dark, hollowed-out circles under his eyes, and knot of the knees tightened in my stomach. "Dad, have you seen a doctor?" I asked. He just smiled, a little too quickly, and changed the subject, asking Jieming about his latest project. The doorbell rang, and my sister Xiaoling blew in like a storm. her hair a shock of purple, her clothes splattered with paint. My mother's lips thinned instantly. You couldn't even dress properly for your sister's visit. Xiaoling ignored her, wrapping me in a tight hug. As our parents descended on Jieming again, questioning his family history and career prospects, Xiaoling pulled me toward the kitchen. Her voice was a low, urgent whisper. "Something's wrong with Dad," she said. "He hasn't been to the hospital in over a month. He keeps saying he's fine, but I hear him coughing every single night. That's bad, Ling, really bad." The knot in my stomach turned to a block of ice. I excused myself as saying I needed to use the restroom. The main bathroom was occupied, so I headed toward the one connected to my parents' bedroom. As I passed their door, I noticed it was slightly ajar. My gaze snagged on something on my father's nightstand, a small collection of pill bottles. My heart started to pound. I slipped into the en-suite bathroom, my hands trembling as I quietly opened the medicine cabinet. It was full. There were multiple boxes of strong painkillers, the kind you can just get over the counter. There were anti-nausea medications and prescription strength cough suppressants containing codeine. All the boxes were nearly empty, and the prescription dates were recent. I picked up a bottle of painkillers, my fingers tracing the stark warning label. This wasn't for a simple cold. I stood frozen in the sterile silence of the bathroom, the pills clutched in my hand. Flashes of the past few hours flooded my mind. Dad's violent coughing fit, his gaunt face, the way his shirt hung loosely on his frame, his forced, overly cheerful smiles. He was hiding something, something serious. From the living room, I could hear his laughter, a sound that now seemed fragile, brittle. Tears started to stream silently down my face as I stared at the names of the medications. These were for managing severe, chronic pain. That, I whispered to the empty room, the question catching in my throat. What are you not telling us? Hey everyone, and welcome back to our home. Episode 4. Last time, we left Jieming and Xiaoling on a high note, finally stepping into their brand new condo. The boxes were unpacked. The furniture was arranged just so, and for a fleeting moment, everything was perfect. You could almost feel the quiet joy as they toasted with a simple cup of tea, their faces lit up by the warm glow of their new lamp and the promise of a future they would build together. They were finally free, finally on their own, or so they thought. That blissful bubble, as we all know, is often just waiting to be popped. The very next morning, the doorbell rang. Not a delivery, not a neighbor, but Jieming's mother, standing on their doorstep with a scrutinizing gaze and a bag full of essentials they didn't need. She had come for an inspection. The tour began. The sofa. Too modern, it'll be out of style in a year. The new smart fridge. Too complicated. All these buttons will just break. The curtains Xiaoling had spent weeks picking out. This color makes the room look so dark. You should have gotten something brighter. Every compliment was backhanded. Every suggestion felt like a command. Jieming tried to play mediator, laughing it off and changing the subject. But you could see the tension quilling in Xiaoling's shoulders. Her smile became tighter, her responses shorter. She was a guest in her own home. Just as Jieming's mother was critiquing the placement of their wedding photo, Xiaoling's phone began to buzz. It was her mom, again, for the 5th time that day. It started with a "Did you eat breakfast?" which quickly morphed into "Are you sure you're drinking enough water?" and then escalated to "I saw a sale on towels. I'm going to buy some and send them over. Don't buy any yourself. You'll pick the wrong kind." Xiaoling tried to be patient, explaining that they had everything they needed. But her mother's voice on the other end was insistent, a constant stream of micromanagement disguised as care. She was trying to control their life from hundreds of miles away. Xiaoling ended the call, her face flushed with a mixture of frustration and hopelessness. She looked over at Jieming, who was still trying to placate his own mother, and the silence between them was suddenly filled with unspoken resentment. The pressure cooker was on, and the lid was about to blow. After Jieming's mom finally left, leaving a trail of unsolicited advice and a lingering scent of disapproval. The damn bro. Xiaoling turned to Jieming, her voice shaking with pent-up frustration. Can you believe her? Criticizing everything. The curtains, the sofa, even the way I make tea. Jieming, already stressed from the visit, sighed heavily. She's just trying to help. Xiaoling, that's just how she is. At least she's here in person. That was the wrong thing to say. At least she's here. My mom calls 20 times a day to ask if I floss my teeth. Which is worse, Jieming? A live-in critic or a remote control operator who never hangs up? The argument spiraled from there. It was their first real, ugly fight in the new house. Voices were raised. Accusations flew. Your mother treats me like a child. Xiaoling yelled, well, your mother treats you like a puppet. Jieming shot back. It wasn't about the curtains or the phone calls anymore. It was about whose family was more invasive, whose mother was more interfering. They were defending their parents, but in doing so, they were attacking each other. The beautiful new home that was supposed to be their sanctuary suddenly felt like a battleground. Hurtful things were said, things that couldn't be easily taken back. The fight ended with Xiaoling storming into the bedroom and slamming the door, leaving Jieming alone in the living room, the echo of their angry words hanging in the air. The dream of a peaceful new life seemed to be crumbling around them. Hours passed in a tense, miserable silence. Xiaoling stayed in the bedroom, and Jieming sat on the too modern sofa, staring into the darkness. The joy of the previous day felt like a distant memory. He replayed the fight in his head, a knot of regret tightening in his stomach. He knew he'd been unfair. He knew they were both under immense pressure. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. He was just about to get up, to knock on the bedroom door and try to apologize, when his phone shattered the silence. It was an unknown number, ringing insistently in the dead of night. His heart hammered against his ribs. Late night calls are never good news. He answered, his voice trembling slightly. Hello. The voice on the other end was frantic, choked with panic. It was isn't. Jieming, it's your father. He's had a heart attack. You need to get to the hospital. Now. And just like that, the world tilted on its axis. The fight, the mothers, the curtains, it all evaporated, replaced by a single terrifying reality. Jieming stood frozen for a second, the phone slipping from his numb fingers. His father, his strong, steady father. He rushed to the bedroom door and threw it open. Xiaoling was sitting on the edge of the bed, her face stained with tears. She looked up, startled by his sudden entrance, at her anger replaced by alarm at the sheer panic on his face. Jieming. What is it? What's wrong? He could barely get the words out. It's my dad, he whispered, his voice cracking. He's in the hospital. Heart attack. In that instant, they weren't adversaries anymore. They were partners, facing a crisis that was bigger than both of them. Their first fight was over, extinguished by a far greater fear. But as they rushed out into the night, the new, terrifying chapter of their life together was just beginning. What happens next? How will Jieming and Xiaoling handle this family emergency on top of their own issues? We'll find out in the next episode. Thanks for watching. And if you're enjoying the series, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming. See you next time. Hey everyone, and welcome back to our series. Last time, we saw Jieming and Xiaoling finally getting their marriage license, a moment that should have been pure joy. But as we all know, life is rarely that simple. Their happiness was overshadowed by the looming pressure from both their families, a weight that was about to get a whole lot heavier. Tonight's episode, titled Warning Signs, takes a dramatic turn. It starts in the dead of night, with a phone call that shatters the silence. It's the kind of call everyone dreads. Jieming picks up, his heart pounding, then learns his father had had a heart attack. He rushes to the hospital, his mind a blur of fear and worry. The bright, sterile corridors of the hospital feel cold and unreal. He finds his mother there, her face etched with panic. The doctor's words are a heavy blow. The heart attack was severe. His father survived, but the warning is stark: he must avoid any and all stress. He needs constant, careful monitoring and care. This isn't just a temporary health scare. It's a life-altering event for the entire family. As Jieming tries to process this, his mother's grief turns to anger. She points the finger directly at Jieming's younger brother, Jizhen. It's his fault. She cries, convinced that Jizhen's recent rebellious behavior and the stress it caused are the sole reason for his father's collapse. The air in the hospital room becomes thick with blame and unresolved family tension, adding another layer of difficulty to an already heartbreaking situation. Jieming is now caught between a recovering father, a distraught mother, and an accused brother. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Xiaoling is dealing with her own parental health crisis. Worried about her father's persistent cough and general fatigue, she has been pushing him to get a full health checkup. He's a stubborn man, always insisting he's fine, but Xiaoling's persistence finally pays off. She accompanies him to the hospital, hoping for reassurance, maybe a simple prescription for a chest infection. They sit in the doctor's office, waiting for the results, the nervous energy between them. But the news they receive is far from reassuring. It's devastating. The doctor pulls up the scans, the words hanging in the air like a death sentence: stage 4 lung cancer. The diagnosis hits Xiaoling like a physical blow. Suddenly, the world tilts on its axis. Her strong, invincible father is now facing a terrifying battle for his life. The drive home is silent, each of them lost in a fog of shock and fear. How could this be happening? How will they tell her mother? The future, which seemed so bright just a short while ago, is now filled with uncertainty and dread. Later that evening, Jieming and Xiaoling finally meet. They're both exhausted, emotionally drained, and carrying the immense weight of their family's crises. They look at each other, and they can see the pain in each other's eyes, but the words just won't come out. How can you even begin to explain the magnitude of what's happening? How can Jieming add his family's burden to Xiaoling's plate when she already looks so fragile? And how can Xiaoling tell Jieming her father has cancer when he has just been through the trauma of his own father's heart attack? They are a team, a married couple, yet in this moment, they feel utterly alone, isolated by their separate griefs. They want to lean on each other, to find comfort in their union, but the fear of overwhelming the person they love most keeps them silent. The space between them is filled with unspoken sorrow. Just as they're sitting in this heavy silence, a jarring sound breaks through. Both of their phones ring at the exact same time. It's a moment of strange, almost cruel synchronicity. On one phone, Jieming's mother is on the line, her voice frantic. Jieming, you need to come home now. Your father needs you. I can't handle this alone. On the other phone, Xiaoling's mother is crying, her voice trembling with fear. Xiaoling, come home. Your father. We need you. I don't know what to do. In that instant, the abstract concept of being torn between two homes becomes a stark, unbearable reality. It's no longer about juggling holiday visits or managing hurt feelings. It's about life and death. Both of their families are in crisis. Both mothers are pleading for their help. Both fathers are critically ill. The pressure that had been simmering beneath the surface has now erupted with volcanic force. They are being pulled into opposite directions with equal, desperate force. How can they possibly choose? Who needs them more? Jieming's father needs round-the-clock care to prevent another heart attack. Xiaoling's father needs to begin a fight against cancer. There is no right answer, no easy solution. Every choice feels like a betrayal. The single moment crystallizes the impossible dilemma they face. The promise they made to each other, to build a new life together, is now being tested in the most brutal way imaginable. The weight of two families, two homes, two major medical emergencies crashes down on them all at once. Their journey as a married couple has just begun, but they are already facing a trial that could break even the strongest of bonds. What will they do? How will they navigate this impossible choice? This is where we leave them, at the heart of the storm, with the weight of the world on their shoulders. Make sure you rate subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode. Hey everyone, and welcome back to our series. Last time, we left Jieming and Xiaoling facing an unimaginable crisis, with both of their fathers suddenly falling seriously ill. The life they had carefully built together began to fracture. This episode, the pressure cooker is about to explode. Let us dive into the battle of two mothers. The air in Jieming and Xiaoling's living room is thick with tension. They've called a family meeting, a desperate attempt to create a fair and logical plan to care for both their fathers. On one side, Jieming's father, a man of immense pride, is adamant. He wants to recover in his own home, surrounded by familiarity. He stubbornly refuses the idea of a hired caretaker, insisting that family should be enough. He sees it as a sign of weakness, an admission that his son can't handle his duties. Jieming tries to reason with him, explaining the logistics, but his father just shakes his head. His jaw set. I don't want a stranger in my house, he declares, his voice weak but firm. You're my son. That's all the help I need. On the other side. But this impossible equation is Xiaoling's father. His situation is more medically urgent. The doctors have started him on a grueling weekly chemotherapy regimen. Each session leaves him drained, nauseous, and utterly dependent on others for even the simplest tasks. He needs constant support, not just physically but emotionally. The long drives to the hospital, the hours spent in the chemo ward, and the difficult recovery days that follow is a full-time job in itself. Xiaoling's heart breaks every time she sees her father so frail, and the guilt she feels when she is not by his side is all-consuming. With the two fathers' needs laid bare, the real battle begins. It is not between the fathers themselves, but between their wives, the two mothers. Jieming's mother, her face etched with worry, starts the argument. Your father just needs rest at home, she tells Xiaoling. But my husband is stubborn. He needs Jieming here to persuade him to manage things. His blood pressure is dangerously high. What if something happens when no one's around? Xiaoling's mother immediately fires back, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and anger. Stubborn. Your husband is stubborn, but my husband is fighting for his life. Chemotherapy isn't a simple cold. He can't eat. He can barely walk. He needs us. Every single week is a battle. His need is more urgent, more critical. The argument escalates quickly. The living room transforms into a courtroom where two mothers plead their case, each trying to prove whose husband is sicker, whose need is more urgent. The words become sharper, more personal. You've always been selfish, thinking only of your side of the family. One accuses, and you think your son's time is more valuable than my daughter's. The other retorts. The conversation is no longer about finding a solution. It is about winning a fight that has no winner. Jieming and Xiaoling sit in stunned silence, trapped between the two women they love, watching their attempt at unity crumble into a bitter feud. The pressure doesn't just come from their mothers, it radiates from the entire extended family. Aunts, uncles, and cousins all have an opinion, each one delivered with the weight of expectation. Jieming, you're the man of the house. You need to be with your father. Xiaoling, the daughter's place is with her parents in a time like this. The couple is being pulled in a dozen different directions. Every phone call is a new demand, a new guilt trip. They're expected to split their time, their energy, and their resources in a way that satisfies everyone. An impossible task that leaves them feeling like failures no matter what they do. In a moment of desperation, Jieming calls his younger brother, Jijin, hoping for an ally, for some relief. He explains the situation, the impossible, demands the constant fighting. He asks, almost begs for help. Jijin, can you maybe take a few days off to help with that? Just to give us a little breathing room. The response he gets is a cold, hard slap in the face. Jijin's voice is detached, dismissive. That's not my problem. You're the oldest son. You're supposed to take responsibility for these things. That's how it's always been. He offers no sympathy, no support, just a reinforcement of the cushioned cultural expectation that had been placed squarely on Jieming's shoulders. The line goes dead, and Jieming is left staring at his phone, feeling more alone than ever. The one person he thought he could count on has just walked away. The weight of it all is becoming unbearable. Jieming and Xiaoling feel like they are drowning. Their lives are no longer their own. Every waking moment is consumed by logistics, by caregiving, by mediating arguments. They barely have time to look at each other, let alone talk. The small, intimate moments that once defined their marriage, a shared joke, a quiet dinner, a comforting touch, have been replaced by exhausted sighs and stressed, logistical conversations. They are operating like the separate employees of a crisis management firm, not a husband and wife. They feel their own health starting to fray, the sleepless nights, the constant anxiety, the physical toll of lifting and caring for their fathers, it's all adding up. They are running on empty, fueled only by adrenaline and guilt. But more terrifying than their own exhaustion is the feeling that their marriage itself is slipping away. The foundation of their relationship is being eroded by the constant external pressures and the internal resentment that has started to quietly build. They are a team, but they are being forced to play for opposing sides. As they lie in bed at night, staring at the ceiling in the dark, the unspoken question hangs heavy in the air between them: how much more can we take before we break completely? Thank you for watching this episode. The story of Jieming and Xiaoling highlights the immense pressure many couples face when dealing with family crises. It's a difficult journey, and it's far from over. Make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next. See you in the next episode. The smell of instant noodles and stale hit me the moment I stepped into Jijen's apartment. It was a stark contrast to the neat, orderly life I tried to maintain. He was sitting on the floor, surrounded by crumpled lottery tickets and overdue bills, his head in his hands. He looked up, his eyes bloodshot and filled with a desperation. I knew all too well. This wasn't the first time. He'd been down this road before, a path paved with broken promises and the allure of a quick win. I came here to check on him, to see if he was eating properly, but what I found was a disaster far worse than I'd imagined. "Brother," he mumbled, his voice hoarse. "You're here." He didn't get up. He just stared at the pile of papers, a mountain of debt that seemed to be crushing him. I walked over and picked up a notice. The numbers were staggering. My heart sank. How could he have let it get this bad? All the hard work, the extra shifts I'd been putting in to save for our parents' retirement, for our future, it all felt like it was dissolving into thin air right before my eyes. "Jijen, what is this? What have you done?" My voice was colder than I intended, but the shock and anger were boiling inside me. He finally looked at me, tears welling up. "I'm sorry, brother. I thought I could win it back. I just needed one lucky break. I swear, I was so close." It was always the same story. So close. The gambler's eternal mantra. He started begging, crawling towards me on his knees, clutching at my pants like a drowning man grasping for a life raft. "Please, Jieming, you have to help me. Just this one last time. I'll pay you back. I swear. I'll do anything. They're going to hurt me if I don't pay." His words, thick with fear, sent a chill down my spine. I wanted to scream, to shake him, to tell him to grow up and face the consequences of his actions. But looking at his pathetic, terrified face, he was still my little brother, the same boy I used to protect from bullies in the schoolyard. My mind was a battlefield. On one side was logic, responsibility, my duty to my wife Xiaoling, and our aging parents. We had a plan, a carefully constructed future. This was a wrecking ball aimed right at it. On the other side was a lifetime of brotherly instinct, a deep-seated need to protect him, no matter how reckless he was. When I got home, the tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Xiaoling knew something was wrong the second she saw my face. I didn't have to say a word. I sat her down and told her everything. Her expression hardened with every detail I shared. Her response was immediate and unflinching. No, Jieming, absolutely not. We're not giving him another cent. She stood up and started pacing the living room. Her arms crossed. We've been down this road how many times? Giving him money doesn't help him. It enables him. He's a grown man. He has to learn to take responsibility for his own life. We have your parents to think about. Their medical bills aren't going to pay themselves. She was right. Every word she said was logical, practical, and undeniably correct. But my heart was in knots. But Xiaoling, I pleaded, he's scared. They're threatening him. He's my brother. She stopped pacing and looked at me, her eyes softening slightly but her resolve unbroken. I know he's your brother, and I'm sorry he's in this mess. But throwing our life savings into a black hole of his making isn't the answer. It will never be enough. When does it end, Jieming? When we have nothing left. We argued late into the night, our voices rising and falling, a familiar, painful dance of her practicality against my conflicted heart. I went to bed that night with a stone in my stomach, her words echoing in my ears. He must take responsibility. The next day, my phone rang. It was Mom. Her voice was frail, trembling with worry. Jieming, I just spoke to your brother. He told me everything. You have to help him, son. Please. I could hear her start to cry. And each sob was like a dagger in my chest. I tried to explain the situation, to tell her about our savings, about Xiaoling's valid concerns. But she wouldn't hear it. He's your brother. He's my son. We can't just abandon him. What kind of family would we be if we let something terrible happen to him? Your father and I don't need much. We can get by. But Jijin, he needs you right now. Her words were a tidal wave of guilt, washing over the logical arguments Xiaoling had built. He's also my son. That sentence rang in my head, over and over. It was emotional blackmail, but it was effective. How could I say no to my mother? How could I live with myself if something happened to Jijin and I had stood by and done nothing? The image of my mother, old and frail, crying over her youngest son, was more than I could bear. My resolve crumbled. I was trapped between my wife's sensible objections and my mother's desperate plea, between my head and my heart, and in that moment, my heart heavy with guilt and fear. That night, I waited until Xiaoling was fast asleep. Her rhythmic breathing was the only sound in the quiet house. I crept out of bed, my heart pounding in my chest as if I were a common thief. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand, the screen glow feeling like a spotlight in the darkness. My hands were shaking as I opened the banking app. I knew this was a betrayal of the trust Xiaoling and I had built, a betrayal of our shared future. Every tap on the screen felt like a small act of sabotage. I found Jijin's name in my contacts, entered the amount of sum so large it made me physically ill to look at and hesitated for a long moment. My mother's crying face flashed in my mind. Then, my brother's terrified one. I took a deep breath and hit confirm. The notification popped up instantly. Transfer successful. A wave of relief, mixed with profound guilt, washed over me. I had put out the immediate fire, but I knew I had just lit a much larger, more destructive one right in my own home. I deleted the notification, closed the app, and slipped back into bed, careful not to wake Xiaoling. I lay there for hours, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. I had made my choice. I had chosen my brother, my mother, my blood, over my wife's trust. I told myself it was for the best, that I would make it up to her, that I'd work harder, save more. But deep down, I knew that some things, once broken, can never be fully repaired. A few days passed. A strange, tense quiet settled over our home. I was overly attentive, trying to cover my guilt with kindness. But Xiaoling was distant. She was polite, but the warmth was gone. I think she sensed something was off, but she didn't press me. Maybe she was giving me the space to confess, but I was a coward. I couldn't bring myself to tell her. Then came the evening I'll never forget. I was in the shower when I heard her call my name. Her voice was flat, devoid of emotion. It was a tone I had never heard from her before, and it terrified me. I walked into the living room, a towel wrapped around my waist. She was sitting on the sofa, holding her phone. My phone. I must have left it on the coffee table. She didn't look at me. She just stared at the screen, her thumb scrolling slowly. I needed to check the account for the utility bill, she said, her voice barely a whisper. I saw the transfer. Jieming, she finally lifted her head, and her eyes were filled not with the anger I had expected, but with a deep, profound hurt that shattered me completely. She didn't need to say anything else. The evidence was right there, the digital testament to my betrayal. The silence in the room was deafening, broken only by the sound of my own world falling apart. Jieming is really pushing his luck, isn't he? We all saw how he secretly gave money to his brother. And now, finally, the truth is out. Xiaoling found out. And let me tell you, the storm has arrived. This is the moment we've been waiting for, the confrontation that will shake their marriage to its core. Xiaoling, bless her heart, has always tried to be the supportive wife, the understanding partner, but this is a whole different level of betrayal. She walks up to Jieming, her voice trembling but firm, and lays it all out. She knows about the money. She knows he went behind her back. The air gets thick with tension. You can almost feel the electricity crackling between them. Jieming, caught red-handed, tries to downplay it. He stammers, makes excuses, but Xiaoling isn't having any of it. This isn't just about the money anymore. It's about trust. It's about respect. It's about being treated like a partner, not a stranger in her own marriage. All the little frustrations, all the times she felt ignored or taken for granted, it all comes bubbling to the surface. This isn't just a small disagreement. This is the most intense, explosive argument they have ever had. The foundation of their relationship is cracking right before our eyes. I'm your wife. Xiaoling's voice breaks, full of pain and disbelief. I'm supposed to be your partner, the one you shared everything with. Why was I kept in the dark? Am I just an outsider to you? You can see the deep hurt in her eyes. She is not just angry. She is heartbroken. She believed they were a team, building a life together, facing every challenge side by side. But Jieming's actions made her feel like she's on the outside looking in, excluded from major decisions that affect their shared future. Her words hung in the air, a powerful accusation that Jieming can't easily brush aside. And what's Jieming's excuse? The classic, I was afraid you wouldn't understand. Seriously, Jieming. That is the best you could come up with. He claims he did it to avoid a fight, to protect her from worry. But is that really the truth? Or was he just afraid of being told no? Afraid of having to justify his actions to his own wife? This excuse is so weak, it is almost insulting. It implies he sees Xiaoling not as an equal, but as an emotional, irrational person who can't handle the truth. Instead of easing the tension, his words just add fuel to the fire, making Xiaoling feel even more misunderstood and disrespected. The trust is shattered. The disappointment is overwhelming. Xiaoling looks at the man she married, and he feels like a stranger. There's nothing left to say, nothing left to argue about. The gap between them feels too wide to cross. With tears streaming down her face, she packs a small bag. She needs space. She needs to breathe. She needs to be somewhere she feels safe and loved. And for Xiaoling, that place has always been her parents' house. Without another word, she walks out the door, leaving Jieming alone in the silent, empty apartment, the weight of his decisions finally crashing down on him. Arriving at her mother's home, Xiaoling collapses into her mom's arms, finally letting out all the sobs she'd been holding back. She feels lost and utterly betrayed. Her parents, of course, are worried sick seeing her in this state. Her mother holds her tight, stroking her hair, while her father watches with a pained expression. He'd been sick, as we know, and seeing his beloved daughter so heartbroken is almost too much for him to bear. He's a man of few words, but his love for Xiaoling is immense. He wants to fix this, to take away her pain, but he knows he can't. Despite his own frailty, Xiaoling's father pulls up a chair and sits beside her. He gently takes her hand. He doesn't offer easy answers or tell her what to do. Instead, he just listens. He lets her pour out her heart, her anger, her sadness. He tells her stories from his own marriage, reminding her that every relationship has its storms. He tries to comfort her, his voice weak but steady, assuring her that she is strong, that she will get through this, and that no matter what, she will always have a home here. His presence is a quiet source of strength for the distraught Xiaoling. But then, the unthinkable happens. In the middle of trying to console his daughter, a shadow passes over her father's face. He clutches his chest, his breath catching in his throat. His words falter, and he starts to sway in his chair. Xiaoling, startled out of her own grief, looks up just in time to see the color drain from his face. Dad! Dad! What's wrong? She cries out, her heart pounding with a new and terrifying fear. Her personal crisis is suddenly overshadowed by a life-or-death emergency. Before she can even process what's happening, her father collapses. He slumps forward, falling to the floor right in front of her. Xiaoling screams a raw, primal sound of pure terror. Her mother rushes over, and the scene descends into chaos and panic. Just when Xiaoling thought things couldn't possibly get any worse, her entire world is turned upside down once again. The secret that shook her marriage has now triggered a tragedy that could tear her family apart forever. What will happen to her father? And how will Xiaoling cope with this devastating blow on top of her heartbreak? The next episode is going to be an emotional roller coaster. Thank you so much for watching with me today. The story just keeps getting more intense, and I can't wait to see what happens next. If you're as hooked as I am, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single moment. Drop a comment below and let me know what you think will happen. Will Jieming step up? Will Xiaoling's father be okay? Let's talk about it. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our series. Last week, we left Xiaoling and Jieming in a really tough spot, dealing with their own conflict while their family faced immense health challenges. Today, in episode 2, we're diving into a night that pushes everyone to their breaking point, a night where everything seems to fall apart. The episode opened with a frantic phone call. Xiaoling's heart drops as she learns her father had been rushed to the emergency room. The chemotherapy, their best hope, has triggered severe, life-threatening complications. She races to the hospital with her mind a blur of fear and panic. The sterile, white hallways of the hospital feel cold and suffocating, a stark contrast to the warmth of her family home. She finds her father in a hospital bed, looking frail and weak, connected to a maze of tubes and monitors. Her mother is already there, her face etched with worry and exhaustion. The doctor delivers the news with clinical precision. It's a critical situation, and the next few hours will be crucial. For Xiaoling, the world outside the hospital room ceases to exist. She is glued to her father's bedside, her life shrinking to the rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor. She holds his hand, whispering words of encouragement, trying to pour her own strength into him, but the weight of it all is crushing. During the day, she is a dedicated professional, trying to keep up with her demanding job. She takes calls in hushed tones in the hospital corridor, answers urgent emails from a cramped chair in the waiting room, and puts on a brave face for her colleagues. But at night, the facade crumbles. The emotional toll is immense. Every time a nurse checks the monitors, her heart leaps into her throat. Sleep becomes a luxury she can't afford, replaced by a constant, gnawing anxiety. She is running on fumes, physically and emotionally drained, caught in a relentless cycle of work, worry, and waiting. Meanwhile, Jieming is facing his own battle at home. He is desperate to be by Xiaoling's side, to hold her and tell her everything will be okay. He knows she is suffering, and his absence feels like a betrayal. But he is also his father's primary caregiver. His dad is still in the early stages of recovery from his own health crisis, needing constant attention and support. Jieming is torn. He is juggling his father's medication schedules, preparing special meals, and helping him with daily tasks. Every phone call with Xiaoling is filled with a painful mix of love and helplessness. He listens to the exhaustion in her voice, feels her fear through the phone, and hates that he can't physically be there to share her burden. He feels like he is failing both the most important people in his life, his wife and his father. He is stretched thin, caught between two duties, two loves, and two worlds of pain. Back at the hospital, the tension is unbearable. In a moment of sheer desperation and grief, Xiaoling's mother finally snaps. Seeing her daughter so worn out and alone, she channels all her fear and anger towards the one person who isn't either. Jieming. She turns to Xiaoling, her voice trembling with accusation. Look at you. You're exhausted, and where is he? Where is your husband? If you hadn't been fighting, you would have been home with us. He would have been here. This is his fault. My daughter shouldn't be going through this alone. The words hit Xiaoling like a physical blow. Her mother's grief has twisted into blame, aimed directly at the man she loves. She is not just grieving her husband's illness. She is grieving the fractured state of her daughter's marriage, and in her pain, she conflates the two. Xiaoling is shattered. She is caught in an impossible crossfire. On one side, there is her mother, consumed by grief and fear, lashing out in a desperate attempt to make sense of the chaos. Xiaoling understands her mother's pain, knows the accusations come from a place of love and desperation. She wants to defend Jieming, to explain that he is also dealing with his own family crisis, that he is not just absent out of selfishness. But how can she argue with her grieving mother at her father's bedside? How can she add more conflict to an already explosive situation? On the other side is her love for Jieming. Her mother's words feel deeply unfair. She knows Jieming is suffering too, torn by his own responsibilities. Defending him feels like a betrayal of her mother's pain, but staying silent feels like a betrayal of her husband. She is paralyzed, standing in the emotional wreckage, with no right answer and no easy way out. The two most important women in her life are at odds, and she is trapped in the middle, her own grief momentarily eclipsed by this new, agonizing conflict. Just when the atmosphere feels impossibly heavy, when Xiaoling feels completely isolated and on the verge of collapse, the door to the hospital room quietly swings open. Jieming is standing there. He looks tired, his eyes are heavy with worry. But he is there. He didn't call. He didn't announce his arrival. He just showed up. The argument with Xiaoling's mother hangs in the air, but his presence cuts through the tension like a silent promise. He managed to arrange for a neighbor to look after his father for a few hours, just so he could be with her. His arrival is an unspoken act of love, a clear message: you are not alone. We are in this together. In his hands, he is holding a small thermos and a single, elegant bouquet of flowers. He walks over to Xiaoling, his eyes communicating everything he can't say out loud. He opens the thermos, and the warm, comforting aroma of homemade congee fills the cold hospital room. It is a simple gesture, but it is packed with meaning. It is nourishment. It is care. It is a piece of home in the sterile, frightening place. The flowers are a peace offering, not just for Xiaoling, but a quiet apology to her mother. A recognition of her pain. He doesn't say much. He just hands her the spoon and gently says, "You need to eat." In that moment, the fight, the blame, and the distance between them seem to melt away. It is not a grand, dramatic reconciliation. It is something quieter, and perhaps more profound. It's a small, gentle step back towards each other, a flicker of light on the darkest night of their life. This episode really shows us how crisis can both tear people apart and bring them together in unexpected ways. Jieming's simple act of showing up with kanji and flowers speaks volumes about his character and his commitment. What did you all think of this powerful moment? Was Xiaoling's mother right to be angry, or was she unfair to Jieming? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. It was a heavy episode, but one filled with so much raw human emotion. Thank you so much for joining me for this recap of episode 9. If you invested in Xiaoling and Jieming's journey, make sure you subscribe to the channel and have those notifications turned on so you don't miss our breakdown of the next episode. We'll see you then. Thank you for watching. Last time, things blew up. Xiaoling finally confronted Jieming about the secret loan, the hidden struggles, and the weight she'd been carrying all alone. The fight was explosive, leaving their marriage hanging by a thread. Jieming, shocked and cornered, had walked out, leaving Xiaoling heartbroken amidst the wreckage of their life. The future looked bleak, and we were all left wondering if this was the end for them. Now, let's dive into what happened next. The silence in the apartment was deafening after Jieming left. Xiaoling sat on the couch, the same spot where they had their explosive fight just hours before. The anger had drained away, leaving behind a hollow ache of exhaustion and despair. Every corner of their home, once a symbol of their shared dreams, and now felt like a monument to their failures. She looked at the framed photo on the side table, a smiling picture from their wedding day. They looked so young, so full of hope, completely unaware of the storm that was brewing just a few years down the line. A single tear traced the path down her cheek. Was that happy couple gone forever? Meanwhile, Jieming was driving aimlessly through the city streets. The angry words from their fight echoed in his head. Xiaoling's accusations, her pain, her raw desperation, he couldn't escape them. He'd been so focused on being the provider, on fixing things his way, that he completely missed how much she was suffering. He thought he was protecting her by hiding the truth about the loan, but he had only managed to build a wall between them. The shame was suffocating. He pulled over by the side of the road, the city lights blurring through his tear-filled eyes. He had messed up badly. He just broken a promise. He had broken her trust, and maybe, just maybe, their marriage along with it. After hours of driving, with the first light of dawn painting the sky, Jieming knew what he had to do. He couldn't let pride destroy the most important thing in his life. He drove back home, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and resolve. He found Xiaoling asleep on the couch, her face pale and stained with tears. A blanket was haphazardly thrown over her. Seeing her like that, so fragile and worn out, shattered what was left of his defenses. He knelt beside her, his hand trembling as he gently brushed a strand of hair from her face. She stirred, her eyes fluttering open when she saw him. Her expression was a guarded mix of surprise and hurt. The air was thick with unspoken words. Jieming took a deep breath, and the apology he'd been rehearsing in his head all night came pouring out. Raw and unfiltered, he told her how sorry he was. Sorry for lying. Sorry for shutting her out. Sorry for making her feel like she was carrying the weight of the world on her own. He admitted his pride and his fear had blinded him. He wasn't just apologizing for the loan. He was apologizing for every secret, every moment he made her feel alone in their partnership. Xiaoling listened, her guard slowly coming down as she heard the genuine remorse in his voice. This was the Jieming she had fallen in love with, the one who wasn't afraid to be vulnerable. Her own tears started to fall again, but this time, they weren't tears of anger or despair. They were tears of relief. She told him how scared she'd been, how isolated she'd felt. They talked for hours, not as adversaries, but as partners again. They laid all their fears and resentments out in the open. And in that raw, honest conversation, they made a new promise to each other, a promise that was more important than any wedding vow. No more secrets, ever. From now on, they would face every problem, every bill, every fear together, as a team. It felt like a fresh start, a true turning point. With this newfound commitment, they started To rebuild, they sat down and created a new plan, one that didn't put all the pressure on one person. They decided to share the responsibility of caring for their parents, not just financially, but emotionally and physically too. The plan was simple but revolutionary for them. Xiaoling decided to talk to her boss and reduce her working hours. She did work a 4-day week, giving her more time to help care for her mother and Jieming as father without completely burning out. To balance this, Jieming made a tough call. He met with his own clients and explained the situation, choosing to take on fewer big projects for the next few months. It meant less income, but it also meant more time for him to be present, to help with his father, and to support Xiaoling. It was a trade-off, but for the first time, it felt like a choice they were making together for the health of their family and their marriage. Their families were surprisingly supportive. Xiaoling's sister offered to take their mother to her weekday appointments, and Jieming's brother agreed to stay with their father 2 nights a week. It was as if their own crisis had a ripple effect, reminding everyone that they were all in this together. The burden, once so heavy, now felt lighter, shared across many shoulders. For a few weeks, life was peaceful. It was a strange and wonderful feeling. Jieming and Xiaoling rediscovered the simple joys of their life together. They cooked dinner together, took walks in the evening, and actually talked, really talked, about their day, about their worries, about their dreams. The constant tension that had filled their apartment for months finally disappeared, replaced by a quiet sense of calm and contentment. It felt like they had weathered the worst of the storm and had finally reached a safe harbor. They had saved their marriage. They were a team again. It seemed like they could handle anything. But while their emotional world was healing, their financial reality was about to come crashing down on them. The reduced work hours and fewer projects meant their income had dropped significantly. At the same time, the medical expenses were doing the opposite. Jieming's father needed a new medication that wasn't fully covered by insurance, and Xiaoling's mother required more frequent physical therapy sessions. The bills started piling up. Small at first, then growing into an avalanche. They were using their savings to plug the gaps, watching with growing anxiety as their emergency fund dwindled to almost nothing. The breaking point came on a Tuesday afternoon. Xiaoling was at home, enjoying a rare quiet moment, when her phone rang. It was an unknown number. She answered, and a formal voice on the other end introduced himself as being from their bank. His tone was polite but firm. He was calling about their condo. He informed her that their mortgage payment was overdue, not just by 1 month, but by 2. Xiaoling's blood ran cold. 2 months. How was that possible? She stammered, trying to explain, but the words wouldn't come. The man on the phone continued, explaining the consequences of falling further behind: late fees, credit score damage, and eventually, foreclosure proceedings. Foreclosure. The word hit her like a physical blow. Their home, the foundation of their life together. She hung up the phone, her hand shaking. Jieming walked in a few moments. Later, a tired smile on his face after a long day. The smile vanished when he saw her expression. What is it? What's wrong? He asked, his voice filled with concern. Xiaoling just held up the phone, unable to speak. The calm they had worked so hard to build had just been shattered. They had managed to save their marriage from imploding, but in doing so, they had steered their lives straight into a financial iceberg. Their relationship was finally on solid ground, but their entire world was on the verge of collapsing. The storm wasn't over. It had just changed direction. So what happens now? They've fixed their relationship, but their finances are in ruins. The threat of losing their home is real and terrifying. Can their newfound partnership withstand this new crisis? Or will the pressure be too much? Make sure you subscribed and have notifications turned on, because you will not want to miss what happens next in episode 11. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. What's the scariest sound in the world? Is it a sudden noise in the middle of the night? Or is it the silence after you ask, How much money do we have left? For Jieming and Xiaoling, that silence was deafening. After another long day of caregiving, they finally sat down at their small dining table, bills and bank statements spread out like a losing hand of cards. The numbers weren't just ink on paper. They were a countdown timer. 3 months. That's all they had. 90 days until their savings would completely run out. 90 days until the financial safety net they had woven so carefully would tear, sending them into a free fall. The weight of their reality pressed down on them. They were supporting not just themselves, but both sets of aging parents. Their dream condo, once a symbol of their success and a sanctuary, now felt like a golden cage. The medical bills for their parents' treatments were a relentless tide, pulling them further and further from shore. The conversation that followed was one they never imagined having. It was a conversation whispered in the dark, heavy whisper. Unshed tears. What do we do? Xiaoling asked, her voice barely audible. Jieming stared at the wall, his mind racing through impossible scenarios. Two horrifying options emerged from the shadows. The first was unthinkable: sell the condo, sell their home, the place filled with their memories, the foundation they had built their life upon. Where would they go? How could they uproot not just themselves, but also their parents who needed stability more than ever? The thought felt like a betrayal of everything they had worked for. But the second option was even worse, a true Sophie's choice. Or, Jieming said, the word catching in his throat. We have to cut back on expenses. Xiaoling knew what he was implying. It was the unspoken fear that had haunted their nights. No, she said, her voice firm, cutting through the heavy air. We can't stop the treatments. Not for your father. Not for my mother. We can't. It was a line in the sand. They looked at each other, the silent pact forming between them. They would not sacrifice one family for the other. They would not give up their home. They were in this together, and they would find another way. Defiance sparked. In their eyes, they refused to be victims of their circumstances. If the existing paths led to ruin, they would have to forge a new one. No matter how difficult, the decision was made. They would fight. They would work harder than ever before. For Jieming, this meant stepping back into the grueling world of night shifts. After a full day at his office job, he wouldn't go home to rest. Instead, he'd head to a warehouse, a logistics center, anywhere that would hire him for the night. He'd stack boxes, load trucks, his body aching with a fatigue that went bone deep. Sleep became a luxury he couldn't afford, stolen and brief, unsatisfying nap between jobs. He was running on pure adrenaline in the desperate hope that each extra dollar earned was a brick reinforcing their crumbling financial wall. His once bright eye became shadowed with exhaustion, but he pushed on, driven by the images of his parents, of Xiaoling, of the life they were fighting to protect. Xiaoling's battle was different but no less demanding. With a heavy heart, she made the difficult decision to leave her flexible part-time job. She needed a full-time salary. A steady, predictable income. She found a position back in her old field, a high-pressure corporate environment she had happily left behind. The long hours, the demanding deadlines, the office politics, it all came rushing back. But the biggest sacrifice was time. She could no longer be the primary caregiver, the one who was always there for every appointment, every meal, every moment of need. This led to another painful compromise. To make their new arrangement work, they had to hire help. But with their budget stretched to its absolute limit, they couldn't afford a professional, highly trained caregiver. They found someone cheap, a woman who seemed kind enough but lacked experience. She would be responsible for looking after all four parents in the condo while Jieming and Xiaoling were at their respective jobs. It was a risky move, a gamble born of desperation. They told themselves it was temporary, just until we get back on our feet, Xiaoling would say, trying to convince herself as much as Jieming. They tried to manage the risk. They wrote down detailed instructions, they created schedules, and called to check in as often as they could. For a few weeks, the precarious system seemed to hold. Jieming and Xiaoling were like two jugglers, keeping an impossible number of balls in the air. They were exhausted, stressed, and barely saw each other. Their home, once a place of peace, was now just a charging station where they briefly refueled before heading back into the storm. But they were surviving. They were making it work. The financial bleeding had slowed. A fragile sense of hope began to take root. And then, disaster struck. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon. Xiaoling was in a critical meeting, her phone silenced in her bag. Jieming was asleep, finally getting a few precious hours of rest before his night shift. At the condo, the caregiver was in the kitchen, distracted by a show on her phone, the volume turned up. In the bathroom, Jieming's father, whose mobility had been getting worse, tried to get up on his own. His hand slipped on the wet tile. There was a sickening thud, a cry for help that no one heard. He lay on the cold floor, his body twisted in an unnatural position, pain shooting through his leg. The caregiver, oblivious, continued to watch her show. Minutes stretched into an eternity. It wasn't until Xiaoling's mother went looking for him that he was found. The frantic phone call finally broke through. Jieming was jolted awake, his heart pounding with a familiar dread. Xiaoling saw the missed calls and felt a cold wave of panic wash over her. They rushed to the hospital, their minds reeling. The gamble had failed. Their desperate attempt to hold everything together had resulted in the very thing they feared most. As they stood in the sterile, white corridor of the emergency room, waiting for news from the doctor, the weight of their choices crashed down upon them. They had tried to save everything, but in doing so, had they put their family in even greater danger? The exhaustion, the stress, the financial pressure, it all paled in comparison to the guilt that now consumed them. They had reached for a solution out of desperation, and it had led them to this moment of crisis. What happens now? What new impossible choices will they face? The path forward has never been more uncertain. Thanks for watching. If you're finding the story meaningful, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss what happens next. Your support means the world to us. See you in the next episode. Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. Today, we're diving into episode 12, and it is a story that hits close to home for so many of us, the heavy weight of family expectations and the blame that can sometimes follow. Let's get right into it. The story starts with a phone call that no one ever wants to receive. Jieming's father has had a serious fall, a fractured hip. The doctors are clear he needs surgery, and soon. This is the kind of news that stops your world. For Jieming, it wasn't just about the medical emergency. It was the start of an emotional storm that would shake his entire life. As soon as he hung up the phone, another call came in. It was his mother. But her voice wasn't filled with worry or a request for support. It was sharp, laced with accusation. "If you had been here," she said, her words like daggers, "if you had been taking care of us like a good son should, this would never have happened." She blamed him for not being there, for choosing his own life in the city over his filial duty. Every word was a blow, piling guilt on top of the shock and fear he was already feeling. Jieming felt the floor drop out from under him. The weight of her blame was immense, crushing. Jieming is what many would call a classic good guy. He works hard, tries to provide for his family, and always does his best to meet everyone's expectations. But this accusation from his own mother shattered him. He started replaying everything in his head. Should he have visited more? Called more? Was she right? Was this his fault? The guilt began to eat him alive. He tried to focus on the practicalities, arranging for the surgery, understanding the recovery process, but his mind was a whirlwind of self-blame and despair. The stress was becoming unbearable, a constant, buzzing anxiety that followed him everywhere. He turned to his wife, Xiaoling, hoping for a safe harbor in the storm. He explained what happened, the accident, the surgery, in his mother's painful words. Xiaoling listened, her heart aching for him. She tried to be the supportive partner he needed, reminding him that it wasn't his fault, that accidents happen, and that his mother was just scared and lashing out. But truth be told, Xiaoling was running on empty herself. She had her own battles to fight, her own family dramas and personal struggles that were draining her every day. Offering support to Jieming felt like trying to pour from an empty cup. She was exhausted, and her attempts to comfort him felt hollow, even to her. The emotional distance between them started to grow, not from a lack of love, but from sheer, bone-deep exhaustion. Over in Xiaoling's family, things weren't any better. Her own father's health had been declining for a while, and the responsibility was falling heavily on the family. Seeing the strain on her older sister, Xiaoling's younger sister, Xiaoling, decided to step up. She was determined to help, to take on more of the caregiving duties for their father. She started managing his appointments, helping with his daily needs, and trying to ease the burden on everyone. It seemed like a positive step, a moment of family solidarity, but her good intentions quickly ran into a wall. Her own mother, instead of appreciating Xiaoling's help, Xiaoling's mother seemed to resent it. She criticized Xiaoling's every move, questioning her methods and picking fights over the smallest details. "You're not doing it right," she'd snap. "You don't know what he needs." The atmosphere in the house became toxic. The constant bickering between mother and daughter added another layer of stress to an already difficult situation. Instead of bringing the family together, Xiaoling's efforts only seemed to highlight the deep cracks that were already there, making the family tension even worse. Back with Jieming, the crisis was spiraling out of control. The guilt and stress from his family situation were bleeding into every aspect of his life, especially his work. At the office, he was a ghost of his former self. He couldn't concentrate in meetings. His mind would drift back to the hospital, to his mother's angry voice. The deadlines he used to meet with these now seemed like insurmountable mountains. He'd stare at his screen for hours, the words blurring, his thoughts a tangled mess of worry and self-reproach. His colleagues started to notice. His boss, who once praised his efficiency, was now sending him emails with subject lines in all caps. Jieming knew he was falling behind. He tried to catch up, staying late or working weekends, but his mind was just not there. He was making simple mistakes, missing key details. The pressure mounted, both at home and at work, until it reached a breaking point. One afternoon, he was called into his manager's office. The conversation was brief and brutal. His performance had collapsed. He missed too many critical deadlines. The company had to let him go. Jieming walked out of the building in a daze, clutching a cardboard box with his personal belongings. He had just lost his job. He felt like he had lost everything. So here we have it. Jieming is unemployed, crushed by guilt, and alienated from his wife. Xiaoling is emotionally depleted, caught between her husband's crisis and her own family's implosion. Her sister Xiaoling is being punished for trying to help. This isn't just a story about a series of unfortunate events. It's about how blame, guilt, and the immense pressure of caregiving can act like a poison, seeping into a family and breaking it apart from the inside. When we're under stress, it's so easy to point fingers, to find someone to blame for our pain. But as we see here, that blame rarely solves anything. It only creates new wounds, deepens existing ones, and pushes away the very people we need the most. It's a powerful reminder that in times of crisis, communication and empathy are our only lifelines. It is also a stark illustration of the sandwich generation, each pipe being squeezed between caring for aging parents and managing their own careers and lives. The emotional toll is immense, and without a strong support system, it's easy to crumble. Jieming's story is a difficult one, but it's one we need to talk about. How do we support each other without burning out? How do we handle parental expectations without losing ourselves? We'll be exploring these questions and more as the story continues. What do you think Jieming should do next? How can these families start to heal? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're going through something similar, remember you're not alone. There are resources available to help with caregiver stress and mental health. Please don't hesitate to seek them out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. We're back for episode 13, and this is where things really start to unravel for Jieming and Xiaoling. The title of this episode is The Day Everything Falls Apart, and trust me, it lives up to its name. If you thought the last episode was tense, you haven't seen anything yet. So, let's dive right in. The episode opened with Jieming, and he is carrying this huge secret. He has lost his job, but he can't bring himself to tell Xiaoling. Why? Well, think about it from his perspective. He has always been the provider, the strong one. In his mind, telling her he got laid off feels like admitting failure, not just as a professional, but as a husband. He is worried about disappointing her, about adding another massive burden to their already stressful lives, especially with his father's health deteriorating. So, he makes a choice, a really bad choice. He decides to hide it. Every morning, the routine is the same. He puts on his suit, grabs his briefcase, and kisses Xiaoling goodbye, just like any other workday. But instead of heading to his office, he is heading to coffee shops, libraries, anywhere with free Wi-Fi where he can frantically search for a new job. We see these montages of him, sitting alone, sending out resume after resume, his face etched with anxiety. The rejections pile up, and you can just feel his desperation growing. It is a powerful visual of modern-day struggle, that pressure to maintain appearances even when your world is crumbling. And his day doesn't end there. After a full day of pretending to work and secretly job hunting, he goes straight to the hospital to care for his father. This is where the exhaustion really hits him. He is spoon-feeding his dad, helping him with physical therapy, and dealing with the emotional toll of seeing his once strong father so frail. He is running on fumes, physically and emotionally. He is trapped in the cycle of lies and responsibility, and it is grinding him down. The show does a fantastic job of portraying this immense pressure. You can see it in the way he rubs his eyes, the slump in his shoulders. He is a man on the brink of collapse, trying to hold two worlds together and failing at both. Meanwhile, Xiaoling isn't oblivious. She's incredibly perceptive, and she starts to feel that something is off. It begins with small things. Jieming is more tired than usual, more distant. He is jumpy whenever she asks about his day at work, giving vague, evasive answers. He is always on his phone, but he quickly hides the screen when she comes near. The little red flags are popping up, and Xiaoling's intuition is screaming at her. The real tipping point, the piece of the puzzle that doesn't fit, is the money. It's payday, and Jieming's salary, which is always deposited on the same day like clockwork. Doesn't he arrive, Xiaoling checks their joint account, and there's nothing. She casually asks him about it, trying not to sound accusatory. Hey, did your salary come in yet? I wanted to pay off the credit card bill. Jieming freezes. He fumbles for an excuse. Something about a payroll delay or a system glitch at the company. It is a weak lie, and they both know it. The look on his face tells her everything she needs to know. He is hiding something, and it's big. Her suspicion now fully ignited, Xiaoling decides to do something she has never done before. The next day, she decides to surprise him at his office with lunch. Of course, when she gets there, his colleagues tell her he hasn't been in for weeks. The HR department confirms he is no longer with the company. The floor just drops out from under her. But where is he? She calls his phone, and he tells her he is in a meeting. Another lie. But Xiaoling has a hunch, a terrible, sinking feeling. She remembers the hospital bills on the counter and drives straight there. And that's where she finds him. Not in the boardroom, but in the hospital ward, patiently feeding his father. It is a heartbreaking scene. He is not a high-powered executive. He is just a son, exhausted and overwhelmed. The moment their eyes meet across the sterile hospital room is absolutely electrifying. His face is a mixture of shock, guilt, and utter defeat. Her face is a storm of confusion, hurt, and betrayal. There are no words, just this crushing silence as the truth hangs in the air between them. The confrontation that follows is brutal. It happens back at their apartment. The space that was once their sanctuary now feels like a courtroom. This isn't just a fight. It's an explosion. All the unspoken tensions, the financial pressures, the emotional exhaustion of the past few months, it all comes pouring out. Xiaoling is hurt, not just because he lost his job, but because he lied. He didn't trust her. He didn't see her as a partner he could lean on. Why didn't you tell me? She asks, her voice breaking. Did you think I couldn't handle it? Do you think I'm that weak? Or did you just not trust me enough? Jieming tries to explain, talking about his pride, his fear of being a failure, his desire to protect her from more stress. But to Xiaoling, his reasons sound like excuses. From her point of view, he shut her out. He made a unilateral decision about their life, their finances, their future. He treated her like a child who needed to be shielded from reality, not an equal partner in their marriage. The argument escalates, getting louder and more personal. All the vulnerabilities of their relationship are laid bare. And then, Xiaoling says it, the one line that changes everything. In a moment of pure pain and anger, she looks at him, tears streaming down her face, and says, "Maybe we got married too quickly." Those words hit Jieming like a physical blow. You can see the last bit of his strength just drain away. It's the ultimate expression of her doubt, not just in him, but in their entire relationship. It questions the very foundation they built their life on. Was their love just a whirlwind romance that couldn't withstand the first major storm? The episode ends right there, with those devastating words echoing in the silence. Jieming is left shattered, and Xiaoling is left wondering if she has just uttered the words that will end their marriage. It's an absolutely gut-wrenching cliffhanger. This fight is so realistic because it's not about one person being right and the other being wrong. You can understand Jieming's flawed reasoning, born from pressure and a misguided sense of duty, and you can completely sympathize with Xiaoling's feeling of betrayal. This is the biggest test their marriage has faced, and honestly, I don't know how they come back from this. The trust has been broken in a profound way. What do you guys think? Was Jieming justified in hiding the truth? Or was Xiaoling's reaction completely understandable? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. This is a heavy one, and it raises so many questions about communication, trust, and the pressure we put on ourselves and our partners. Next week's episode is going to be critical. Will they find a way to repair this damage, or is this the beginning of the end for them? Make sure you rate, subscribe so you don't miss our breakdown of the aftermath. Thanks for watching. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our deep dive into the latest episode, A Temporary Separation. Wow, what an emotional roller coaster this one was. Let's get right into it. The episode kicks off with a heart-wrenching decision from Xiaoling and Jieming. They've decided to separate, but they're calling it a temporary break too. Fix things individually. It's a phrase we hear a lot. This idea of needing space to work on yourself before you can work on the relationship. But is it a step towards healing or a step towards the end? That's the big question hanging over this entire episode. We see Xiaoling packing her bags and moving back into her parents' home. The official reason is to take care of her father, who has been unwell. On the surface, it's a noble, filial act. She slipped back into her old room, surrounded by memories of her childhood. Her mom is there, fussing over her, making her favorite foods, clearly thrilled to have her daughter back under her roof. There's this unspoken sense of victory in her mother's eyes, a feeling that things are finally returning to the right order. But for Xiaoling, it's anything but a happy homecoming. The familiar walls feel like they're closing in on her. The warmth of her family is there, but it can feel the cold. empty space that Jieming's absence has created. She is physically present, but her heart and mind are somewhere else entirely. Meanwhile, Jieming is going through a parallel experience. He has also moved back to his parents' house, using his own father's health as the reason. Just like Xiaoling's mom, Jieming's mother can't hide her delight. She sees this as a chance to reclaim her son, to have him back in her orbit. She dotes on him, trying to make him comfortable, but her efforts just seem to highlight what's missing. Jieming finds himself sitting in his old bedroom, staring at posters on the wall from a lifetime ago. He's surrounded by the people who have loved him his entire life, yet he has never felt more alone. The silence in the house is deafening, a stark contrast to the life, the arguments, the laughter he shared with Xiaoling. Every little thing, from the way his mom folds the laundry to the TV shows his dad watches, reminds him of how different his life was just a few days ago. The shared loneliness, even when they're miles apart, is so powerful. It shows us that despite the fighting and the problems, their lives are deeply, fundamentally intertwined. They are each other's home. The episode really drives this point home with some beautifully shot scenes. We see Xiaoling staring blankly at her phone, her thumb hovering over Jieming's name, but never making the call. We see Jieming doing the exact same thing. They are both trapped in a cycle of pride, hurt, and longing. They are trying to follow through on their decision to fix themselves individually, but it is clear that being apart is breaking them even more. This isn't healing. It's a slow, painful ache. The comfort of their family homes have become a gilded cage, reminding them of the freedom and connection they've lost. They're going through the motions of caring for their parents, but it is just a distraction from the real issue. They miss each other terribly. Then we have Chen Wei, who steps in as the voice of reason. He finds Jieming brooding and gives him some much-needed, no-nonsense advice. He listens patiently as Jieming vents his frustration, talking about the pressures and the misunderstandings. But then Chen Wei cuts right to the chase. He tells Jieming, do and lose the most important thing in your life while you are busy fixing the small stuff. It is such a simple but profound statement. He reminds Jieming that relationships aren't about being perfect individuals who come together. They're about two imperfect people learning to navigate life's challenges together. This conversation is a turning point. You can see the wheels turning in Jieming's head. He starts to realize that this separation isn't a solution. Pushing Xiaoling away to fix himself is just another way of running from the real work that needs to be done, the work of communication, compromise, and forgiveness within the relationship itself. Chen Wei's words are a wake-up call, not just for Jieming, but for the audience too. How often do we focus on minor problems and lose sight of the bigger picture of the person who truly matters? And just when we think the emotional tension can't get any higher, the episode delivers its final, stunning twist. The ending is a masterclass in suspense and drama. We see Xiaoling feeling unwell. At first, she brushes it off as stress or maybe something she ate. Her mom, ever observant, suggests it might be something more. We follow Xiaoling as she takes a pregnancy test, her hands trembling. The camera focuses on her face, her expression a mix of disbelief, fear, and a glimmer of something else. Hope. And then, we see it. The positive result. Xiaoling is pregnant. The screen cuts to black, leaving us all gasping. This changes everything. Absolutely everything. The separation, the family drama, the individual struggles, all of it is now viewed through a completely new lens. A baby, a new life that ties Xiaoling and Jieming together forever. Whether they're ready for it or not, what does this mean for them? Will this news be the catalyst that brings them back together? Or will it add an entirely new layer of complication and pressure to their already fractured relationship? This baby represents a future, a shared responsibility that they can't run away from. It forces them to confront their issues head-on. There is no more facing things individually when a third life is about to enter the picture. The stakes have just been raised to an unbelievable level. I have so many questions. How will Jieming react when he finds out? Will this news push their meddling mothers to finally support their union? Or will it give them more ammunition to interfere? This cliffhanger is absolutely brilliant because it doesn't offer any easy answers. Instead, it throws a grenade into the story and leaves us desperate to see the fallout. It is a development that feels both shocking and, in a strange way, inevitable. It is the ultimate test of their love and commitment. This episode was a powerful exploration of love, loneliness, and family. It showed us that sometimes the thing we think will fix us getting space is the very thing that breaks us. And that final reveal, I am still processing it. What a way to end the episode. I can't wait to see how they handle this bombshell next week. What are your theories? Do you think the baby will save their relationship or complicate it further? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. I'll be reading them all. Thanks for watching this recap with me. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next breakdown. See you all next time. Should I tell him? Should I not? My mind was a battlefield. Every time I picked up the phone to call Jieming, my thumb would hover over his name, but I could never press it. It felt like my heart was caught in a storm, a whirlwind of joy and terror. A baby, our baby, a tiny flicker of life was glowing inside me, a secret miracle in the middle of all this chaos. How could something so wonderful happen at the worst possible time? My mom was ecstatic. Of course, her eyes lit up like they hadn't in months. She immediately started talking about baby names, nursery colors, and tiny little shoes. But then the worry would creep back into her face. Ling Ling, she'd say, her hand on my arm, with everything going on. Your father's health, Jieming's business. Are you sure? Is this the right time? Her words echoed my own deepest fears. The world around us was crumbling, a relentless avalanche of stress and uncertainty. How could I bring a child into this? Was it fair to them? Was it fair to us? Every night, I'd lie awake, one hand on my belly, feeling a connection I couldn't explain. This tiny being was already a part of me, a part of us. The thought of Jieming not knowing felt like a betrayal. This was his joy, his hope too. He deserved to know. He had a right to know. But the fear was paralyzing. What if this news just added another unbearable weight to his already burdened shoulders? His business was on the verge of collapse. He was fighting battles on all fronts. And I was about to drop a life-altering bombshell. Would it be the final straw that broke him? After days of agonizing, I finally found a sliver of courage. My fingers trembled as I dialed his number. It rang once, twice, and my heart hammered against my ribs. Hello. His voice was tired, strained. It broke my heart to hear him like that. Jieming, I whispered, my own voice barely audible. It's me. Can we meet? There's something I need to tell you. There was a pause on the other end. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head, probably bracing himself for more bad news. Of course, he said, his voice softening slightly. Where? Duh, I said, without hesitation. The one by the old bookstore, where we had our first date. I needed that place. I needed to be surrounded by the memory of our beginning, the time when life felt simple and full of promise. I needed to remember the man I fell in love with, the one who saw a future in my eyes. The hadn't changed. The air still smelled of roasted coffee beans and old books. Sunlight streamed through the large window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. Just like that first day, Jieming was already there, sitting at our table, staring into a cup of black coffee. He looked older, worn down by the world. The dark circles under his eyes told a story of sleepless nights and endless worry. When he saw me, he managed a weak smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. I sat down opposite him, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. The silence between us was heavy, filled with unspoken anxieties. I didn't know where to start. All the words I had practiced vanished. He reached across the table and took my hand. It was rough, but warm. Xiaoling, he said gently. What's wrong? You can tell me anything. Taking a deep breath, I looked him straight in the eye. Jieming. I am pregnant. The words came out in a rush, a quiet confession that seemed to suck all the air out of the room. I watched his face, bracing for impact, expecting shock, maybe even anger or despair. For a moment, he just stared at me, his expression unreadable. His grip on my hand tightened. And then, something incredible happened. His eyes, which had been so clouded with worry, filled with tears. Not tears of sadness, but of pure, unadulterated joy. A single tear escaped and traced a path down his weary cheek, then another. He started to cry, not loudly, but with deep, shuddering breaths that racked his entire body. He buried his face in his hands, his shoulders, shaking. A baby, he choked out, his voice thick with emotion. We're having a baby. He looked up at me, his face streaked with tears but illuminated by a smile so bright it was like seeing the sun for the first time after a long, dark winter. Oh, Xiaoling, he whispered, his voice cracking. Finally, some good news, something hopeful. In that moment, all the stress, all the financial troubles, all the family drama seemed to melt away. There was only us, and this incredible, miraculous news that stitched our frayed world back together. He stood up, pulled me out of my chair, and wrapped me in a hug so tight it felt like he was trying to merge our two bodies into one. I buried my face in his chest, breathing in his familiar scent, and cried with him, tears of relief, of joy, of overwhelming love. We were having a baby. In the midst of the chaos, life had given us a reason to fight, a beacon of hope to guide us through the darkness. We just stood there holding each other, two people against the world, fortified by a tiny, secret promise of a future. For a few precious minutes, nothing else mattered, but the real world has a cruel way of shattering beautiful moments. As we held each other, lost in our own little universe of hope, my phone rang, its shrill tone slicing through the peaceful quiet of the. I pulled away from Jieming, a knot of dread tightening in my stomach. I saw my mom's name on the screen. Why would she be calling now? I answered, my voice still shaky. Mom. What's wrong? Her voice on the other end was a frantic, panicked sob. Lin. It's your father. He can't breathe. We're in the ambulance. They're taking him to the ICU. The world tilted on its axis. The joy, the hope, the warmth of Jieming's embrace, it all evaporated, replaced by a cold, numbing terror. I looked at Jieming, my face pale, the unspoken question hanging in the air between us. Our moment of hope had been swallowed by a new, terrifying crisis. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our story. Today, we're diving deep into episode 10, a chapter filled with heartache and impossible decisions. If you've been following along, you know things have been tense, but what happened next will push everyone to their absolute limits. Let's get right into it. The episode opens with the news no family ever wants to hear. Xiaoling's father, who had been bravely fighting his illness, takes a turn for the worse. The doctors deliver the devastating verdict: his condition is critical, and they need to prepare for the inevitable. The cold, clinical words hang in the air, shattering the fragile hope the family had been clinging to. For Xiaoling, this is the moment her world completely falls apart. The weight of it all comes crashing down on her, and she breaks down in the sterile hospital corridor. The strong, resilient woman we've seen is now just a daughter facing the unimaginable loss of her father. In this moment of complete despair, Jieming is right there by her side. He doesn't say much. What could he possibly say? Instead, he just stays with her, offering a shoulder to cry on, a silent presence that speaks volumes. He knows that his being there is the only comfort he can give. He holds her as she sobs, sharing in her grief, trying to shield her from a pain that feels all-consuming. It's a raw, heart-wrenching scene that shows the depth of his commitment to her. He is not just her partner. He's her anchor in the middle of a raging storm. But as Jieming stands by Xiaoling, His own family crisis is escalating. His phone rings, and it's his mother on the other end. Her voice is sharp, laced with anger and disappointment. She scolds him, questioning his loyalty. Your own father is sick at home, and you're off taking care of someone else's family, she demands. Her words are like daggers, striking him right where it hurts most. She can't understand why he would prioritize Xiaoling's family over his own, especially now. To her, it's a betrayal, a sign that he has forgotten his duties as a son. The call ends, leaving Jieming stunned and reeling. He is now trapped in an impossible situation. Torn between two homes, two families, both in crisis. On one hand, there's Xiaoling, who is facing the darkest moment of her life and needs him more than ever. Leaving her now would feel like an act of abandonment. On the other hand, there's his own father, whose health is also fragile, and his mother, who feels neglected and hurt. He feels an immense pressure to be in two places at once. To be a supportive partner and a dutiful son. Every choice feels like the wrong one, and the guilt is eating him alive. He's standing at a crossroads, and either path he takes will lead to someone getting hurt. Just when Jieming is at his breaking point, something unexpected happens back at his family home. His brother, Jijun, suddenly steps up. Out of nowhere, he announces that he will take full responsibility for their father's care. He tells Jieming not to worry, to go and be with Xiaoling, and that he has everything under control. On the surface, it seems like a selfless act, a brother finally doing the right thing. But Jieming, and we as the audience, can't help but feel a sense of unease. This is Jijun we're talking about. His sudden change of heart feels suspicious. Why now? What's his real motive? Jieming is too overwhelmed to question it too deeply, but a seed of doubt is planted. Faced with this sudden, albeit strange, solution, Jieming makes his choice. He looks at Xiaoling, sees her tear-streaked face and the sheer terror in her eyes, and knows he can't leave her. He decides to stay. He chooses to be her rock, to walk with her through this valley of sorrow. No matter what it costs him personally, that's a powerful declaration of his love and loyalty to her. He pushes aside the guilt from his mother's call and focuses on the person right in front of him who needs him most. He is making a stand, choosing the family he is building with Xiaoling. But while Jieming is making this noble sacrifice, the scene shifts back to his parents' house, and our suspicions about Jijun are confirmed in the most chilling way. The camera follows Jijun, not to his father's bedside, but to his parents' bedroom. He is not there to care for anyone. He's there with a singular, selfish purpose. We see him secretly and methodically searching through drawers and closets, his eyes scanning for something specific. It soon becomes clear what he's looking for: the property documents. His supposed act of kindness was just a cover, a calculated move to get Jieming out of the way so he could execute his own greedy plan. He is exploiting his family's crisis for his own financial gain, revealing his true, despicable nature. The episode ends on the shocking cliffhanger. Jieming is in the hospital, supporting the love of his life through an unbearable tragedy, completely unaware that his own brother is betraying their family in the worst way possible. He made a choice based on love and compassion, but that choice has left his own family vulnerable to a threat from within. What will happen when Jieming finds out? And how will he handle the fallout from both of these devastating crises? This episode truly asks the question, what do you do when there are no good choices? Jieming is facing an emotional and ethical nightmare, and the consequences of his decisions are sure to be explosive. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Jijun is back, and the family reunion is anything but sweet. Remember how we thought he was just a bit down on his luck, maybe a little irresponsible? Well, we were wrong, dead wrong. The truth is finally out, and it's 100 times worse than we could have ever imagined. Jijun isn't just in debt. He's drowning. He owes to million yuan. And not to some bank or a patient creditor, but to loan sharks. The kind of people who don't send polite reminders. They send threats. They've made it crystal clear if Jigen doesn't pay up, it's not just him who's in trouble. They're coming for the entire family. They threaten to hurt his parents, to hurt Jieming. Suddenly, this isn't about money anymore. It's about survival. You can see the desperation in Jigen's eyes. He is a cornered animal, and he is ready to do anything to get out of this mess. His plan is as chilling as it is simple. The family home, the one their father built from the ground up, is his target. He is going to get his hands on it one way or another. His initial thought: steal the property deeds, just take them and run. But he knows that won't be enough. He needs his father's signature to make the transfer legal. So, his plan evolves. If he can't steal it, he'll force it. He is actually contemplating coercing his own father, a man who has given him everything, to sign away their home, their security, their entire life savings. This is the new law. For Jigen, he is willing to sacrifice his family to save himself. The brother Jieming once knew is gone, replaced by a stranger driven by fear and selfishness. Meanwhile, their mother, with her sharp intuition, senses the shift in the house. The air is thick with unspoken tension. Jigen's constant pacing, the shifty looks, the hushed, aggressive phone calls he takes in the other room, it all adds up. She knows something is terribly wrong. Her motherly instinct is screaming that her son is in deep trouble. And it's more than just a bad investment. She can feel the danger creeping into their home, a place that was always supposed to be a sanctuary. Her heart aches, torn between love for her son and a growing fear of what he might do. She tries to talk to him, to get him to open up, but he shuts her out, his face a mask of anxiety and anger. She watches him, her heart heavy, knowing that the storm she has been dreading is finally about to break. Unable to shake the feeling of dread, she decides to do something. Trusting her gut, she waits until Jigen leaves the house. His departure hasty and suspicious. Then, she discreetly makes a phone call. She calls Jieming. Her voice is trembling as she whispers into the phone. Jieming, you need to come home. Now. Something is wrong with your brother. I'm scared. She doesn't have all the pieces yet, but she knows Jieming is the only one who might be able to get through to Jigen, or at least help protect their father. It is a desperate plea from a mother who feels her family slipping through her fingers. She hands up, her hand shaking, hoping she has done the right thing and that Jieming can get there in time. The weight of the family's fate now feels like it's resting squarely on her shoulders, and she is terrified of what will happen next. Her fear propels her to do something she never thought she'd do: snoop through her son's belongings. With a heavy heart, she enters Jigen's room. It's messy, chaotic, a reflection of his current state of mind. She looks around and not even sure what she is searching for. Then her eyes land on a sack of papers hastily shoved under his mattress. Her hands tremble as she pulls them out, and what she finds confirms her worst fears. They raid documents, forged documents, a fake property transfer agreement with a space left blank for their father's signature. There are also letters, threatening in file, detailing the consequences of non-payment. The 2 million yuan debt is laid bare in black and white. It all clicks into place. The lies, the desperation, the plan. Her son wasn't just planning to ask for the house. He was planning to steal it. The betrayal cuts deeper than any knife. The atmosphere in the house becomes absolutely suffocating. Every ticking clock, every creaking floorboard sounds like a countdown to disaster. Fear is a constant companion. The mother now knows the full extent of her son's desperation and the danger they are all in. Betrayal hangs heavy in the air, a poisonous fog that chokes the love and trust that once filled their home. Jigen is a ticking time bomb, his desperation growing with every passing hour. His father is oblivious, a gentle soul in the path of an oncoming hurricane. And the mother is trapped in the middle, armed with a terrible secret, paralyzed by fear for one son and of the other. The battle lines are drawn within the four walls of their own home. It is a collision of fear, betrayal, and desperation, and it feels like everything is about to shatter. The question is no longer if it will happen, but when, and who will be left standing when the dust settles. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel. Today, we're diving deep into episode 18, an episode that shatters the fragile peace and changes everything for our characters. So, grab your snacks, get comfortable, and let us break down the confrontation we've all been waiting for. The episode kicks off with Jieming, his face a mask of pure panic. He gets that dreaded phone call from his mother, her voice trembling on the other end. Without a second thought, he drops everything and races home. You can just feel the urgency, the mounting dread of what he is about to walk into. The air at home is thick with tension, so thick you could cut it with a knife. He finds his brother, Jigen, and that's when it all explodes. This isn't just a simple argument. This is a full-blown confrontation. Jieming, fueled by a mix of fear and desperation, demands answers. He pushes and prods, refusing to back down. For weeks, we've watched Jigen carry this heavy secret, his guilt eating away at him. And now, under his brother's relentless questioning, the dam finally breaks. Jigen collapses into a heap of tears and guilt, his words tumbling out in a choked confession. He admits everything, the lies, the deceit, the terrible truth he has been hiding. It is a gut-wrenching moment, watching this man completely unravel. You can see the weight of the world lifting off his shoulders, only to come crashing down on everyone else. But here is the twist that none of us saw coming. Their father, who we thought was resting in his room, had been listening the entire time. He overhears every single word of Jigen's confession. Imagine the shock, the betrayal. The man he trusted, his own son, has deceived him in the worst way possible. The truth hits him like a physical blow. We see his face drain of color, a look of utter disbelief and heartbreak before he collapses. Again, it is a devastating echo of his first collapse, but this time, it feels so much more final, so much more tragic. The family's worst nightmare had come true, all because a secret was kept for far too long. What follows is pure, unadulterated chaos. The quiet home transforms into a scene of frantic panic. Shouts at terrors, the desperate call for an ambulance. The family, still reeling from the confession, now has to pull themselves together to save their father. They rush him to the hospital, the siren wailing in the background serving as a soundtrack to their crumbling world. Every second feels like an eternity. The camera work here is brilliant, capturing the shaky, disoriented feeling of the moment. You're right there with them in the back of the ambulance, feeling their terror and hopelessness. Meanwhile, word gets back to Xiaoling. She is pregnant. She is supposed to be resting. But the moment she hears what had happened, none of that matters. Her love for Jieming and his family overrides any concern for her own well-being. She runs to the hospital, her mind racing. This is a pivotal moment for her character, showing us the depth of her commitment and strength. She isn't just an outsider anymore. She's part of this family, for better or for worse, and she's ready to face the storm alongside them. And then we get the scene that sets the stage for everything to come. For the very first time in this entire series, both families are gathered in the same place. Jieming's family, shattered and broken, and Xiaoling's family, worried and confused, all standing in the stark, sterile hallway of a hospital. The air is thick with unspoken words, with years of tension, and now, with shared fear, you can see the glances, the silent questions, the blame hanging in the air. This isn't just a family crisis anymore. It's a collision of two worlds, forced together by tragedy. The dynamics are electric, and you know that nothing will ever be the same between them after this night. As they wait, clinging to a thread of hope, the doctors finally emerge from the operating room. Their faces are grim, and you just know the news isn't good. They deliver the verdict, and it is a bombshell. The father needs heart surgery, but it is not just any surgery. It is a high-risk procedure, with no guarantee of success. The family is faced with an impossible choice, and the weight of it falls squarely on Jieming's shoulders. The episode ends right there, leaving us all on the edge of our seats. Will the surgery be successful? How will the family cope with the financial and emotional burden? And what will become of Jijen now that his secret is out? This episode was an absolute masterclass in drama and suspense, and it had perfectly set the stage for an explosive finale. What did you all think of this confrontation? Were you shocked by the father overhearing? Let me know all your theories and reactions in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our breakdown of the next episode. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Have you ever felt like you were walking on a tightrope, with the lives of everyone you love balanced on your shoulders? That's where we find Jieming, standing outside the operating room, every tick of the clock echoing the frantic beat of his own heart. His father is on the operating table, undergoing a high-risk heart surgery, and the air in the hospital corridor is thick with a silence that's louder than any scream. The weight of it all, the fear of the unknown, it's crushing him. He turns to Xiaoling, his usual confident mask completely gone. For the first time, we see the raw, unfiltered Jieming. His voice is barely a whisper as he admits his deepest fears. He is terrified of failing, not just as a son, but as a person. He is scared of disappointing everyone who has ever believed in him, of not being the strong pillar his family needs him to be. He feels like an imposter, playing the part of a hero while inside, he is just a scared kid drowning in expectations. He confesses that he has been trying to carry the world alone, believing that showing any weakness would make him a failure. Listening to him, something shifts in Xiaoling. She sees her own reflection in his vulnerability. She admits that she has been doing the exact same thing. She's been carrying her own immense burdens in silence, convinced that asking for help is a sign of weakness. While her own father lies in the ICU, she's been putting on a brave face, shouldering the pain and the worry all by herself, never letting anyone see the cracks. She thought she was protecting others, but really, she was just isolating herself in her own private battle. In that quiet, sterile hallway, surrounded by the smell of antiseptic and the hum of hospital machinery, they have a profound realization. They've been fighting separate wars when they should have been allies all along. They see that their strength isn't in their individual resilience, but in their unity. It's not about one person being the hero. It's about being a team. They finally understand that they don't have to carry their mountains alone. They can share the weight, lean on each other, and find strength not in being unbreakable, but in being vulnerable together. They promise each other, right there and then, that from this moment on they stand as one. No more secrets, no more solitary struggles. They are a team. Just as they make this pact, a nurse quietly approaches them. There's news from the ICU. Xiaoling's father, who had been unconscious for so long, has finally woken up. The first word he spoke, his voice weak but clear, was his daughter's name, a wave of relief, so powerful it almost brings Xiaoling to her knees, washes over her. For the first time in what feels like an eternity, a tiny ray of hope breaks through the suffocating darkness. She rushes towards the ICU, Jieming right behind her, a newfound strength in their shared steps. It feels like the tide is finally turning. But this is a story of highs and lows, of hope and despair chasing each other in an endless cycle. As they reach the ICU, another door swings open down the hall. It is the door to the operating room where Jieming's father had been for hours. The surgeon steps out, his face unreadable, his scrubs a stark contrast to the white walls. He looks directly at Jieming, his expression tired and grim. The world seems to hold its breath. Every sound fades away except for the frantic pounding in Jieming's chest. The doctor takes a deep breath, and the words that follow will change everything. He says, the surgery was successful. But, and there, he stops. The word hangs in the air, a cool, sharp hook, promising that the relief is only momentary, that the storm is far from over. What could possibly follow that but? What new horror awaits them on the other side of this brief victory? The battle for life has been won, but it seems another, perhaps even more difficult war, is just beginning. What happens next? You'll have to join us for the next episode to find out. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more. The light at the end of the tunnel. For a moment, that's exactly what it felt like. After weeks, months of holding our breath, the universe finally seemed to grant us a moment of peace. My father had surgery, a procedure so complex the doctors warned us to prepare for the worst, was a success. He made it. The surgeon came out his face, tired but with a small, reassuring smile, and told us he was stable. He wasn't out of the woods, not by a long shot. The road to recovery would be long and arduous, requiring round-the-clock care and immense patience. But he was alive. That was the miracle we had been praying for, the one thread of hope we clung to. My mother, who had been a pillar of strength, finally allowed herself to weep, not tears of grief, but of overwhelming relief. I held her, feeling the tremors of exhaustion and gratitude run through her body. In that same week, another small miracle unfolded. Xiaoling's father, who had been languishing, barely responsive to the aggressive treatments, began to show signs of improvement. It started subtly, a twitch of his fingers when Xiaoling spoke to him, his eyes tracking her movement across the room, a faint pressure when she squeezed his hand. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. They said his body was finally starting to respond to the medication. The fight wasn't over, but for the first time in what felt like an eternity, we weren't just fighting a losing battle. There was a glimmer of hope, a small, fragile flame in the darkness. We saw a future where both our fathers could sit with us again, maybe even share a meal, watch their grandchild grow. For a brief, beautiful period, it felt like our families could finally breathe. The suffocating weight of impending loss lifted just enough for us to catch our breath. Xiaoling and I would sit by our father's bedsides, sharing stories, planning for a future that suddenly seemed possible again. We talked about baby names, about renovating a room for my dad when he came home. My brother, Jieming, even managed a genuine smile. The first ID seen in months. It was a fragile peace, a temporary truce. Our war against fate, but we cherished every second of it. We allowed ourselves to believe that the worst was behind us, that we had weathered the storm and were sailing into calmer waters. We were so focused on the medical battles that we almost forgot about the other enemy lurking in the shadows, the one we had created ourselves. But reality has a cruel way of snapping you back. The peace was shattered by a single phone call. It was for Jieming. I saw his face drain of all color. His hand trembled as he held the phone to his ear. The loan sharks, the debt we had incurred, the desperate measures we took to pay for the initial hospital bills, was a monster that had only been sleeping. It was now awake and hungry. They were done waiting. The threats, which had been vague warnings before, now became terrifyingly specific. They knew where Jieming worked. They knew my mother's daily routine. They knew where I lived with Xiaoling. The joy and relief of the past few days evaporated, replaced by a cold, stomach-churning fear. The hospital bills were still piling up. My father's recovery would cost a fortune, and now the mountain of debt was no longer just a number on a piece of paper. It was a physical threat to our existence. Jieming was a wreck. He was consumed by guilt, convinced he had brought this horror upon our family. He started talking about desperate things, about running, about finding a way to pay them off. No matter the cost, he was spiraling, and I knew I couldn't let him face this alone. The fear was paralyzing, but seeing my brother so broken, I felt a different emotion rise within me: anger. Cold, hard anger. These predators were feasting on our desperation, kicking us when we were already down. They were thriving on our pain. I couldn't let them win. I couldn't let them destroy what was left of our family. That night, After a long, tense conversation with Xiaoling, I made a decision. Running wouldn't solve anything. They would always find us. Paying them would only empower them and bleed us dry. There was only one way to fight this. The next morning, I walked into a police station. My hands were shaking, my heart pounding against my ribs, but my resolve was firm. I sat down with the detective and told him everything. Every detail of the loan, the exorbitant interest, the escalating threats. I explained how they preyed on people in desperate medical situations. The detective listened patiently, his expression grim. He told me they were well aware of this particular group, but getting victims to testify was nearly impossible. People were too afraid. They needed someone on the inside, someone willing to cooperate, to wear a wire, to be the bait that could finally help them build a case strong enough to dismantle the entire operation. He looked at me, the question hanging in the air. Are you willing to help us? He asked. It will be dangerous, very dangerous. I thought of my father, fighting for his life. I thought of Xiaoling and our unborn child. What kind of future could they have if we were always looking over our shoulders, living in fear? I took a deep breath. Yes, I said, I'll do it. I'll testify. I'll do whatever it takes. My decision sent a shockwave through the family. Jijin begged me not to do it, terrified that I was signing my own death warrant. My mother pleaded with me, her eyes filled with a fresh wave of fear. She had just gotten her husband back from the brink. She couldn't bear the thought of losing her son. Even Xiaoling, who had supported my initial decision to go to the police, was now having second thoughts. The reality of the danger was sinking in, but I knew, deep down, that this was our only chance at a real future, a future free from this terror. I had to believe in the system, then. The police. I had to believe that doing the right thing was worth the risk. I agreed to help the police set up a sting operation. It was the most terrifying thing I have ever agreed to do. The loan sharks didn't wait for the police to make their move. It was as if they sensed our defiance. The retaliation was swift and brutal. It was no longer about a few threatening phone calls. One evening, as my mother was leaving the hospital, two men on a motorcycle cornered her, snatching her purse. In whispering a chilling message in her ear, tell your son to back off. They vandalized Jijin's car, spray painting warnings on the windows. They were closing and tightening the noose, making it clear that they could get to any of us, at any time. But their most cruel, most terrifying threat was aimed directly at the heart of our new hope. They started targeting Xiaoling. They sent her a picture of our apartment building, taken from the street below. The message was simple: we know where you live. We know you're pregnant. That single threat changed everything. The danger was no longer just about me. It was about her. It was about our baby. The miracle of our father's survival was now overshadowed by a threat so dark and personal, it threatened to consume us all. The fight for our lives had just entered a terrifying new chapter. Have you ever felt so lost and desperate that it felt like the whole world was against you? Jieming certainly felt that way. He finally found the courage to tell both his and Xiaoling's families everything. He laid it all out on the table: the loan sharks, the terrifying threats, and the constant fear for Jijin's safety. The room fell silent, the weight of his confession hanging heavy in the air. For a moment, he feared the worst: blame, anger, maybe even being cast out. But what happened next was something he never could have predicted. The arguments, the disagreements, the long-standing tension between the two families, they all just melted away. In their place, a single, powerful resolve started to form. The first to speak was Xiaoling's father. This was the man who had always been so careful, so protective of his family's future. He looked at Jieming, then at his own daughter, and said he was willing to sell the piece of land he'd been saving his entire life. It was supposed to be for his retirement, a safety net for his old age. But now, he saw a more immediate need, a crisis that demanded sacrifice. Before anyone could even process this incredible gesture, Jieming's mother spoke up. With tears in her eyes, she declared she would sell all her gold jewelry. These weren't just trinkets. They were her life savings, pieces bought for weddings, anniversaries, and special occasions, each one holding a precious memory. But memories, she realized, couldn't protect her son. The spirit of sacrifice was contagious. Xiaoling's mother, known for her collection of treasured antiques and collectibles, didn't hesitate. She announced she would sell every last piece. These items were her pride and joy, things she had spent years curating, but compared to a human life, they were just things. One by one, family members from both sides stepped forward, offering whatever they could. It was no longer about his family or her family. They were just one family, united by a shared crisis and a common goal to save Jijen. Watching this, Jieming was overwhelmed. He had expected a storm of anger, but instead, he was met with a tidal wave of love and support. It was a powerful, humbling moment. With the money gathered, they had enough to pay off the ruthless loan sharks. The cloud of fear that had been hanging over them began to lift, but the family's support came with one firm, non-negotiable condition. Jijen had to agree to go to rehab. This wasn't just about paying off a debt. It was about saving his life, about giving him a real chance to break free from the addiction that had caused all this chaos. They needed him to fight for himself as hard as they were fighting for him. Jijen, seeing the immense sacrifices made on his behalf, finally broke down. He looked at his family, at the faces filled with both pain and hope. Then he agreed. It was a promise, a pact sealed with tears and a desperate desire for a new beginning. With the plan in place, they contacted the police. Armed with the evidence of the loan shark's threats and illegal activities, the authorities moved swiftly. Then, a coordinated operation, the entire gang was apprehended. The phone calls stopped. The menacing figures lurking in the shadows were gone. A collective sigh of relief echoed through the family. It felt like the nightmare was finally over. They had faced the storm and come out the other side, battered but together. They had won, or so they thought. The next morning, as the sun rose on what should have been the first day of their new, peaceful life, they made a chilling discovery. Jijen was gone. His bed was empty. His phone was turned off. And there was no note, no message, no clue as to where he could be. The relief they had felt just hours before instantly turned into a new, terrifying wave of panic. They had saved him from the loan sharks, but had they lost him to something else entirely? The search for Jijen was just beginning. Where could he have gone? Why would he disappear now, when they had finally cleared the path for his recovery? Was he scared? Did he run from the responsibility of rehab, or was there another, more sinister reason for his disappearance? The questions swirled, each one more frightening than the last. The family that had just come together in a powerful display of unity now faced their greatest test yet. Finding Jijen was no longer just about helping him. It was about bringing a piece of their family back home. What happened to Jijen? Join us next time to find out. Make sure you rate, subscribe, and have your notifications turned on so you don't miss the next chapter in this incredible story. Thanks for watching. Welcome back to our recap series. Today, we're diving into the heart-wrenching episode 22, The Brother on the Edge. Get your tissues ready, because this one is an emotional roller coaster from start to finish. The episode kicks off with a city-wide panic. Jijen has vanished, and his phone is off. The entire family, along with their friends, splits up, combing through every street, every alley, every place they can think of. The tension is palpable. You can feel their desperation growing with every unanswered call and every dead end. Each character is pushed to their limit, their faces etched with worry. We see frantic searches through crowded markets, quiet parks, and bustling train stations, but Jijen is nowhere to be found. The city, usually so vibrant, now feels like a maze of dead ends, amplifying the family's growing sense of dread. The director does an amazing job of capturing this frantic energy, making us feel like we're right there with them, searching for any sign of him. As day turns to night, a sense of hopelessness begins to settle in. Just when it seems like all leads have been exhausted, Jieming has a sudden flashback. It is a hazy, sun-drenched memory from their childhood. He sees himself and Jijen, the small boys, laughing and playing in a forgotten, slightly run-down playground on the outskirts of the city. It was their secret hideout, a place they went to escape the world. He remembers the squeak of the swings, the rough texture of the climbing frame, and the view from the top of the slide. It was a place of shared secrets and brotherly bonds. A light bulb goes off in his head. It is a long shot, a desperate guess, but it's the only lead he has left. He jumps in his car and speeds off, leaving the others behind, driven by a powerful mix of instinct and nostalgia. Jieming rides at the old playground. It is dilapidated and eerily quiet under the moonlight, a ghost of its former self. He scans the area, his heart pounding in his chest. Then, he looks up at the abandoned apartment building next to it, the one they used to dare each other to climb. And there he is, a silhouette against the night sky, standing on the edge of the roof. It is Jijen. The relief Jieming feels at finding him is instantly replaced by sheer terror. He carefully makes his way into the building, his footsteps echoing in the empty stairwell, his mind racing, trying to figure out what to say, what to do. Every step he takes is filled with a dreadful weight, knowing that one wrong move, one wrong word, could lead to an irreversible tragedy. He reaches the rooftop and slowly approaches his brother. The wind whips around them, adding to the chilling atmosphere. Jijen, he calls out, his voice barely a whisper. What follows is one of the most powerful and emotionally raw confrontations in the entire series. All the years of unspoken resentment, jealousy, and pain come pouring out. Jijen turns, his eyes filled with a terrifying emptiness. He talks about always feeling like a disappointment, constantly living under the weight of their parents' expectations. He felt like he could never measure up, that no matter what he did, it was never good enough. He speaks of the immense pressure to be the perfect older brother, the responsible one, while feeling completely invisible. Jijen accuses Jieming of having it easy, of being the favored child, the one who could do no wrong. He brings up painful childhood memories, a birthday where Jieming got the bigger gift, a school award that Jijen felt he deserved more. Each word is a dagger, revealing the deep wounds that have festered for years. It is a brutal, honest confession of a man who feels utterly broken, convinced that his very existence is a burden to everyone he loves. The performance here is absolutely stellar. You can see the lifetime of hurt etched onto his face as he stands precariously on that ledge. He feels like a failure, and in his mind, this is the only way to stop disappointing everyone. But then, the perspective shifts. Jieming, with tears streaming down his face, finally opens up about his own struggles. He confesses that he never saw himself as the favorite. In fact, he always looked up to Jijen. He saw his older brother as brilliant, capable, and strong, everything he wasn't. Jieming admits that he was the one who felt overshadowed. He lived in Jijen's shadow, constantly trying to keep up, always feeling like the less talented, less intelligent younger brother. He explains that his own achievements felt hollow because he just wanted his brother's approval. His confession is a shocking twist, revealing that both brothers felt like they were living in the other's shadow. It is a heartbreaking realization that their rivalry was built on a foundation of mutual misunderstanding and insecurity. Jieming tells Jijen, I was always jealous of you, but I never stopped loving you. You're my brother. This raw, heartfelt admission shatters the tension. It is the one thing Jijen needed to hear. The anger and despair in his eyes begin to fade, replaced by confusion, and then, finally, a glimmer of understanding. He sees his own pain reflected in Jieming's eyes. The wall he built around himself for years begins to crumble. Overwhelmed by emotion, Jijen breaks down completely, sobbing uncontrollably. The tough exterior he always maintained is gone, revealing the vulnerable, hurting person underneath. Slowly, cautiously, he takes a step back from the edge, his leg giving way as he collapses onto the rooftop floor. Away from danger, Jieming rushes to his side, wrapping him in a desperate embrace. For the first time in years, they are just two brothers holding on to each other, united in their shared pain and love. In that moment, there's a sense of hope, a feeling that they can finally start to heal. Just as we let out a collective sigh of relief, the scene cuts back to the family home. They've just received the call from Jieming that Jijin is safe. A wave of relief washes over everyone. They're crying, hugging, thankful that the nightmare is over. But the relief is tragically short-lived. In the middle of this emotional moment, their mother, who had been silently bearing the stress of the entire ordeal, suddenly clutches her chest. A sharp, unbearable pain shoots through her. Her face goes pale, and she gasps for air before collapsing to the floor. The celebration instantly turns to horror. The episode ends right there, with the family screaming her name and the joyous reunion cut short by another potential tragedy. It's an absolutely brutal cliffhanger that leaves us reeling. Just when we thought the worst was over, the show pulls the rug out from under us, reminding us that for this family, the storm is far from over. What an episode! It masterfully explored the complexities of sibling relationships and the silent burdens we carry, and that ending. I have no words. What do you think will happen next? Let me know your theories in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more recaps and analysis. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Suddenly, Mother clutched her chest, her face pale, struggling to breathe. We panicked, thinking the worst, and rushed her to the hospital. The minutes felt like hours as we waited, our minds racing with terrible possibilities. Was it a heart attack? Was she going to be okay? The doctor finally came out, and his words were a strange mix of relief and confusion. It wasn't her heart. It was extreme stress. The immense pressure she'd been under for years had finally manifested in a terrifying physical way. Back home, something had shifted. The wall she had built around her heart for so long began to crumble. For the first time, she sat us all down, her voice trembling but steady. She looked at me, Jieming, and then at my brother, Jijin. The confession that followed was something I never expected. She told us how Jijin had been a very sickly child, constantly in and out of hospitals. The fear of losing him had been so overwhelming, so all-consuming, that it drove her to protect him at all costs. She spoiled him, gave him everything he ever wanted, and shielded him from every hardship, real or imagined. Her love for him became a fortress, built out of fear. But in building that fortress around Jijin, she admitted she had inadvertently left me outside in the cold. She saw it now, how her preoccupation with one son had led to the emotional neglect of the other. She hadn't meant to, she just got lost in her fear. It wasn't that she didn't love me. It was that her love was overshadowed by a constant, gnawing anxiety for my brother. Hearing her say it, seeing the regret in her eyes, was both heartbreaking and incredibly healing. It was the validation I had unknowingly craved my entire life. That conversation changed everything. It was raw, honest, and painful, but it was real. We talked for hours, laying bare all the unspoken hurts and misunderstandings that had festered between us for decades. For the first time, we weren't just a family living under the same roof. We were a family truly connecting, listening to each other's pain. My father, still weak and recovering from his own major surgery, reached out and held my mother's hand. He looked at all of us, his eyes filled with a hope I hadn't seen in years. "It's not too late," he said, his voice raspy but firm. "We can start over, all of us. Together." It felt like the first day of the rest of our lives. But just as one storm seemed to be passing, another was gathering on the horizon. While our family was having this long overdue moment of reconciliation, my wife Xiaoling started to feel a sharp, cramping pain in her abdomen. She tried to brush it off, not wanting to disrupt the fragile peace we had just found. She clutched her stomach, her face tight with discomfort, trying to breathe through the waves of pain. What could it be? Was it just something she ate, or was it a sign of something more serious? The timing couldn't be worse. We had just started to heal, to believe that we could finally move forward. A new fear began to creep in, a chilling premonition that our journey through crisis was far from over. The next morning, the sense of a new beginning was palpable in the house, but it was tinged with a new anxiety. Xiaoling's pain hadn't gone away. In fact, it seemed to be getting worse. She was trying to be brave, putting on a smile for everyone, but I could see the strain in her eyes. I took her aside, away from my parents. You have to see a doctor, I insisted. We can't take any chances. She finally agreed, and the trip to the clinic was filled with a tense silence. We were both thinking the same thing, but neither of us dared to say it aloud. What if something was wrong with the baby? The doctor's office was sterile and quiet, a stark contrast to the emotional turmoil we were feeling. After a preliminary check, the doctor's expression became serious. He recommended an immediate ultrasound. As we waited for the results, my hand was clasped tightly in Xiaoling's. Her hand was cold, and I could feel her trembling. Every possible scenario ran through my head, each one more terrifying than the last. We had just found our footing as a family, and now it felt like the ground was about to be pulled out from under us all over again. The doctor returned with the ultrasound images, his face unreadable. He pointed to the screen, and my heart stopped. He explained that there were some complications that required immediate attention. He spoke in calm, medical terms, but all I could hear was the rush of blood in my ears. Xiaoling started to cry softly, her hand gripping mine even tighter. Was this a test? After everything we had just overcome, were we really facing another crisis? Leaving the clinic, the world outside seemed to be moving in slow motion. The fragile hope from the previous night felt like a distant memory. How were we going to tell my parents? My father was still recovering, and my mother had just started to shed the weight of her long-held stress. Could they handle another blow? Could I? I looked at Xiaoling, at her tear-streaked face and the fear in her eyes, and I knew I had to be strong. For her, for our unborn child, for the family that was just starting to learn how to heal. My father's words echoed in my mind. We can start over. I clung to that phrase like a lifeline. This was our first test as a newly reconciled family. We had to face it together, no matter how difficult it was. The path forward was uncertain, but for the first time, I knew I wouldn't be walking it alone. Thanks for watching, and please follow for the next part of our story. Have you ever felt like your world was about to come crashing down? That one single moment could change everything. Well, that's exactly where we left off with Xiaoling. In the last episode, we saw her suddenly double over in pain, a sharp, terrifying cramp that sent a wave of panic through everyone. Jieming, bless his heart, reacted in a flash, scooping her up and rushing her to the hospital, his face a mask of pure fear. The silence in the car was deafening, broken only by Xiaoling's pained breaths and Jieming's frantic calls to their parents. The emergency room was a blur of bright lights, hurried nurses, and the cold, sterile smell that always seems to heighten anxiety. Every second felt like an hour as they waited for the doctor. When Dr. Chen finally emerged, her expression was serious, and everyone's heart sank. She explained that Xiaoling had experienced a threatened miscarriage. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. It was a close call, a terrifyingly close call. The baby was still there, the tiny heartbeat a fragile but persistent drumbeat of hope. But the danger was far from over. The doctor's orders were absolute, strict, unconditional bed rest. No exceptions. Xiaoling was not to get up unless absolutely necessary. The slightest exertion could tip the delicate balance. It was a sentence. In a way, confined to her bed for the foreseeable future, her body a vessel she no longer felt in control, all for the sake of the tiny life she was so desperate to protect. Jieming stood by her side, holding her hand, his knuckles white. He whispered promises, reassurances, but the fear was still there, a shadow in both their eyes. News travels fast, especially bad news. Within the hour, both mothers arrived at the hospital, their faces etched with worry. Now, if you've been following this story, you know that Xiaoling's mother and her mother-in-law haven't exactly been the best of friends. Their relationship had been, let us say, a masterclass in passive aggression, a cold war fought over cooking methods and parenting advice. But seeing their daughter-in-law, lying pale and vulnerable in that hospital bed, all of that animosity just evaporated. For the first time, they weren't rivals. They were just two mothers, united by a common, primal fear for their child and grandchild. It was a sight to behold. Jieming's mother, who had often seemed more concerned with the idea of a grandchild than with Xiaoling herself, was a completely different person. She bustled around, fluffing pillows, fetching water, her usual critical tone replaced by a soft, genuine concern. She leaned in and whispered to Xiaoling, "Don't you worry about a thing. You just rest. We're all here. Mama will take care of everything." And for the first time, Xiaoling felt the word mama from her mother-in-law didn't feel like a claim, but like a promise. She looked at Xiaoling not as the incubator for her grandchild, but as a young woman going through a terrifying ordeal. She saw the fear in Xiaoling's eyes and responded with a maternal instinct that transcended their complicated history. She would sit by the bed for hours, sometimes just quietly knitting, her presence a silent, steady comfort. She started bringing homemade soups, carefully researched for their nutritional value for expectant mothers on bed rest. She gently chided Jieming if he made too much noise, her protective instinct now fully extended to her daughter-in-law. And what about Xiaoling's own mother? The woman who had been so fiercely protective, so skeptical of Jieming and his family. Well, seeing Jieming's unwavering devotion began to melt the last of her resistance. She watched him as he refused to leave Xiaoling's side. He read to her. He massaged her legs to prevent cramps. He patiently fed her every meal. He was her rock, her constant, her everything. He even learned how to track the baby's movements, his hand resting gently on Xiaoling's belly, his face lighting up with a mixture of awe and relief at every tiny flutter. One afternoon, Xiaoling's mom found him asleep in the uncomfortable visitor's chair, his head slumped at an awkward angle, his hand still loosely holding Xiaoling's. In that moment, she didn't see the boy she thought wasn't good enough for her daughter. She saw a man, a husband, a future father who loved her daughter with a depth that was undeniable. Later, she pulled him aside, her eyes a little misty. "Jieming," she said, her voice soft, "you're a good man. Thank you for taking such good care of her." It was the validation he had been yearning for, the final piece of the puzzle clicking into place. The two families were finally becoming one. Speaking of families coming together, let's not forget the fathers. While the women were managing the fort at the hospital and at home, the two dads found their own way of coping. They did meet up for quiet dinners. What started as a way to give the women space turned into a genuine friendship. They did talk about everything and nothing, work, hobbies, their own anxieties about becoming grandfathers. They found common ground in their shared worry and their deep love for their children. They did share a drink, pat each other on the back, and offer the kind of silent, solid support that only other fathers can truly understand. It was a quiet, understated, but incredibly powerful bonding experience. The crisis had inadvertently forged a new, strong link between the two families. Back at home, Jieming made a major decision. He walked into his boss's office and requested an extended leave of absence. There was no hesitation, no second guessing. His career could wait. His priority was Xiaoling and their baby. He transformed their home into a recovery sanctuary. He moved the most comfortable armchair into their bedroom, set up a small fridge with snacks and drinks, and curated a library of books and movies. He became her full-time caregiver, her nurse and her chef, her entertainer. His world shrank to the four walls of their bedroom, and he had never been happier or more fulfilled. His love wasn't just in words. It was in every action, every single day. Weeks turned into a month. Xiaoling, with Jieming's constant care and the combined support of their now united family, slowly grew stronger. The color returned to her cheeks, and the fear in her eyes was replaced by a cautious optimism. The day of the big follow-up appointment arrived, and the air was thick with tension. Everyone went with them. Both sets of parents are united front of hope and anxiety, waiting in the hallway. Xiaoling and Jieming sat in the examination room, holding hands so tightly their fingers were numb. Dr. Chen came in, a file in her hand and an unreadable expression on her face. The silence stretched, becoming unbearable. She looked at the ultrasound screen, then at them, then back at the screen. Finally, she smiled, a wide, genuine, beautiful smile. "Well," she began, then their hearts stopped. "I have some good news. The baby is doing wonderfully. The risk has passed. You ray in the clear." A tidal wave of relief washed over them. Tears streamed down Xiaoling's face, and Jieming let out a breath he didn't even realize he'd been holding for a month. They were laughing and crying at the same time, a messy, beautiful explosion of emotion. But Dr. Chen wasn't finished. She cleared her throat, her smile turning into a mischievous grin. "Actually," she said, pausing for dramatic effect, "I should say, the babies are doing wonderfully." Xiaoling and Jieming just stared at her, dumbfounded. "Babies?" Jieming stammered, his voice barely a whisper. Dr. Chen nodded, turning the monitor towards them. "Yes, congratulations, you're having twins." And on the screen, clear as day, were two tiny, perfect, flickering heartbeats, side by side, strong and steady. Their world hadn't crashed down after all. It had just doubled in size. What a roller coaster. From the brink of tragedy to double the joy. I honestly did not see that coming. How will they handle the news of twins? How will the two grandmothers react to having two babies to fuss over? The dynamic is about to get so much more interesting. Let me know what you think is going to happen next in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter in this incredible story. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode. Have you ever gotten news so big it completely changes your life in an instant? That's exactly what happened to Jieming and Xiaoling. Remember how excited we all were when we found out they were expecting? Well, hold on to your hats, because it's not just one baby, it's twins. Can you imagine? The joy in both families was absolutely electric. Grandparents to be on both sides were over the moon, already planning shopping sprees and arguing over who would get to babysit first. It was a beautiful, chaotic whirlwind of pure happiness. But as the initial shock and excitement started to settle, a different feeling began to creep in. Worry. Two babies meant double the joy. Yes, but it also meant double the expenses. Double the diapers, double the formula, double the sleepless nights, and double the space needed. Jieming and Xiaoling looked around their cozy little condo, a place filled with so many happy memories of their life as a couple. They loved their home, but they knew, with a sinking feeling, that it just wasn't going to be big enough for a family affair. The reality of their situation began to hit them hard. Suddenly, the future felt a little less like a daydream and a lot more like a series of very expensive, very real challenges. The financial pressure was mounting. Jieming and Xiaoling spent countless nights at their kitchen table, surrounded by bills and spreadsheets, trying to figure out a plan. The numbers just weren't adding up. How could they afford to have everything on their current budget? The dream of raising their twin was starting to feel like an impossible puzzle. It was a tough, emotional conversation, but they both knew what they had to do. They made the heart-wrenching decision to sell their condo. This wasn't just selling a property. It was letting go of the first chapter of their life together, the home where they built their dreams as newlyweds. There were tears, of course. Packing up their belongings, They defined little mementos that brought back a flood of memories: a movie ticket stub from their first date, a silly souvenir from a weekend trip. Each box they packed felt like closing a door on their past. But amidst the sadness, there was also a glimmer of hope. They were doing this for their children, for their future. It was a sacrifice, but it was a sacrifice made out of love, and that gave them the strength to move forward. As they were grappling with this huge life change, their families, as always, were right there with them. Seeing their children so stressed, the parents from both sides knew they had to step in. They all got together, a big family meeting filled with concern and love. Ideas were thrown around, but nothing seemed quite right. And then, Jieming's dad said something that stopped everyone in their tracks. What if we all did this together? The idea was radical, almost crazy. Instead of Jieming and Xiaoling trying to find a new, bigger place on their own, why not pool all their resources? Why not sell both family homes and buy one large house where everyone could live together? At first, there was silence. Could it really work? To separate families with their own routines and habits all under one roof. It sounded like the plot of a sitcom, but the more they talked, the more it started to make sense. It wasn't just about saving money. It was about creating a support system, a built-in village to help raise the twins. The grandparents could be there every day, not just for weekend visits. The famous two homes that had defined their family for so long could finally, truly become one home. The decision was made. It was a massive undertaking, a logistical whirlwind. Of selling two properties and buying one, there were moments of doubt and disagreements over paint colors and kitchen layouts, but their shared goal kept them united. They found the perfect place: the spacious house with a big backyard, enough room for everyone to have their own space, in a huge living area where they could all be together. Moving day was organized chaos, boxes everywhere, furniture being shuffled around, and lots of laughter. It was the physical manifestation of their two families merging into one. The sign on the door might as well have said one home. It was a new beginning for everyone. The house quickly filled with the sounds of life, the smell of different meals cooking at the same time, the chatter of excited grandparents, and the quiet anticipation of the new arrivals. For Jieming and Xiaoling, the relief was immense. The financial burden was lifted, replaced by the comforting presence of their family. They weren't facing this alone anymore. They had a team, a village, ready and waiting. And amidst all this positive change, another quiet transformation was taking place. Jigen, who had been struggling for so long, finally took a real, determined step toward recovery. Seeing his family come together, witnessing the love and sacrifice they were making for the next generation, seemed to spark something in him. He checked himself into a rehabilitation facility, but this time felt different. There was a seriousness in his eyes, a quiet resolve that hadn't been there before. He was tired of letting everyone down, but most of all, he was tired of letting himself down. He fully committed to the process, attending every session, opening up to his counselors, and facing his demons head-on. The family rallied around him, sending letters of encouragement and visiting whenever they could. They let him know he was still a part of their one home, and that his place was waiting for him when he was ready. It was a slow, difficult journey, but for the first time in a long time, there was genuine hope for Jigen. He was rebuilding his life, brick by brick, with the unwavering support of his family as the foundation. For a while, the beautiful, peaceful calm settled over the big new house. It felt like they had finally weathered all the storms. The twins were on their way. Jigen was on the path to recovery, and the family was stronger and more united than ever. They were settling into their new rhythm, a happy blend of two families becoming one. Jieming and Xiaoling could finally breathe, focusing on the joyful anticipation of parenthood without the crushing weight of financial stress. The grandparents were in their element, happily nesting and preparing for their new roles. It was a picture of domestic bliss, the happy ending they had all worked so hard to achieve. It seemed like all the drama was behind them. then they could finally just enjoy this new chapter. But as we all know, life is never that simple, is it? Just when you think you have everything figured out, the universe loves to throw a curveball. The piece was wonderful, but it wasn't destined to last. The doorbell rang one ordinary afternoon, and when the door opened, everyone froze. Standing on the doorstep was Xiaoling. She was back, but she wasn't alone. Beside her, holding her hand, was a tall, blond man with a friendly but slightly bewildered smile. He was clearly not from around here. Xiaoling, with a nervous grin, made the announcement. She had returned home, and she brought her new foreign boyfriend with her. The quiet, peaceful atmosphere in the house shattered in an instant. Jaws dropped. 100 questions hung in the air. Who was this guy? How did they meet? How long had this been going on? Why didn't she tell anyone? Just as one chapter was settling into a peaceful rhythm, a completely new, unexpected, and very complicated one was just beginning. The one home was about to get a whole lot more crowded and a whole lot more interesting. What will happen next? You'll have to tune in to find out. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Welcome back to our series. Episode 26 is here, and it's all about the massive challenge of becoming one big family. So, grab your popcorn, because things are about to get intense. The moving trucks have finally pulled away, and both families are officially under one roof. The new house is huge, beautiful, and supposed to be a dream come true. But on day when that dream started to look a lot more like a chaotic reality show. Remember all that excitement and optimism? Yeah, it evaporated pretty quickly. The first signs of trouble brewed in the heart of the home, the kitchen. Jieming's mom, a master of traditional flavors, and Xiaoling's mom, who prides herself on her own family recipes, immediately clashed. It started with a simple question: what's for dinner? But it escalated into a full-blown culinary cold war. One wanted to steam, the other wanted to stir-fry. Spices were debated, cooking times were scrutinized, and soon enough, the kitchen became a territory divided by passive-aggressive comments about sodium levels and the proper way to chop vegetables. It was less about feeding the family and more about establishing kitchen supremacy. And it wasn't just the moms. The dads found their own battlefield right in the living room. The TV remote became the ultimate prize. Jieming's dad is a die-hard sports fan who needs to watch every game live. Xiaoling's dad, on the other hand, is a connoisseur of historical documentaries and classic films. You can imagine how that went. The channel was flipped back and forth so many times, the TV probably got whiplash. 1 minute it as a soccer match, the next it as a black and white movie. The arguments were legendary. This game is crucial. But this documentary is about the fall of an empire. It was a constant battle for control of the family's entertainment hub, peace in the living room. Not a chance, space, which they thought they had plenty of, suddenly felt like it was shrinking. The larger house became a maze of personal belongings with no clear home. Shoes piled up by the door, a mix of both family styles. Bathrooms were a constant source of tension. Who used all the hot water? Became the morning's first complaint. Whose towel is this on the floor? Became the second. Every closet, every shelf, every square inch of counter space was contested territory. It felt like everyone was living on top of each other, and the illusion of having enough room for everyone was shattering with every slammed door and every frustrated sigh. The dream house was starting to feel more like a crowded, chaotic dorm room. Amidst the swirling storm of domestic disputes, Jieming and Xiaoling found themselves in a new, unexpected role: family mediators. They were constantly running back and forth, trying to put out fires. They go from calming down their moms in the kitchen with promises of a cooking schedule to negotiating a TV timetable for their dads in the living room. It was exhausting. They had to become diplomats, learning the fine art of validating everyone's feelings while gently pushing for compromise. Okay, Dad, How about you record your game and watch it after mom's documentary? Or, Mom, what if you cook tonight and Auntie cooks tomorrow? They were the bridge between two stubborn islands, and frankly, the pressure was immense. Their own relationship was being tested as they tried to keep their families from falling apart. Slowly, very slowly, their efforts started to pay off. It wasn't a sudden change, but a gradual, painstaking process. The first breakthrough was the kitchen schedule. After a major argument over a pot of soup, Jieming and Xiaoling sat both mothers down and created a rotating weekly dinner plan. Monday was Jieming's mom's night. Tuesday was Xiaoling's mom's. It was rigid, but it worked. The fighting stopped, and a reluctant truce was formed. Then came the living room. The dads, tired of fighting, had finally agreed to a shared TV calendar. Sports got their primetime slots, and so did the documentaries. Other household chores followed. A cleaning rota was posted on the fridge. A system for laundry was established. Little by little, routines began to form, and a fragile sense of order started to emerge from the chaos. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Just as things were starting to settle down, a new dynamic was thrown into the mix. Xiaoling, Xiaoling's younger sister, came to visit with her foreign boyfriend, Mark, and let me tell you, Mark was a breath of fresh and slightly confusing air. He was a lovely guy, but his very different cultural background created some hilarious and awkward moments. For example, he tried to help Jieming's mom in the kitchen and almost caused a heart attack by putting soy sauce in a dish that definitely didn't need it. He greeted Xiaoling's dad with a big, enthusiastic hug at which left the reserved older man completely bewildered. At dinner, his attempts to use chopsticks were a spectacle of flying food. But his cheerful, easygoing nature also brought some much-needed laughter into the tense household. He would ask innocent questions like, "Why do we need to have so many different dishes for one meal?" Which, surprisingly, got everyone to stop and think. His presence, while sometimes chaotic, served as a weird kind of comic relief, forcing everyone to see their own habits through a new lens. The fragile peace felt like it was finally taking hold. The routines were working, the laughter was more frequent, and it seemed like they might just survive this grand experiment. Everyone gathered for dinner, and tonight was Jieming's mother's turn to cook. She had prepared a huge, impressive feast to show off her skills. Everyone was complimenting the food. The atmosphere was light, and Jieming and Xiaoling exchanged a look of relief. They were doing it. They were making it work. Xiaoling's mother took a big bite of a delicious-looking shrimp dish, praising its flavor. She smiled, took another bite, and then her expression changed. Her smile faded. She started coughing, just a little at first, then more intensely. She looked at Jieming's mother, her eyes wide with a dawning horror. "What did you put in this?" she asked, her voice raspy. Jieming's mother, proud of her secret ingredient, replied, "Just a little bit of peanut sauce to give it that extra kick." A silence fell over the table as everyone turned to look at Xiaoling's mother, whose face was now turning red. Xiaoling's mother is severely allergic to peanuts, and that's where we're leaving you. Will she be okay? How will the family handle a crisis of this magnitude? This isn't just about a cooking mistake anymore. It's a matter of life and death. The trust that was so painstakingly built is about to be shattered. You are not going to want to miss the next episode to see what happens. Thanks for watching, and make sure you resubscribe so you don't miss a moment of the drama. I'll see you next time. Hey everyone, and welcome back to our channel for episode 27. Last time, things got pretty intense with the allergy scare, and let me tell you, the fallout is just beginning. Get ready, because today is an emotional roller coaster. The episode kicks off right where we left off, with the two mothers-in-law, let's call them Mrs. Chen and Mrs. Wang, in a full-blown argument. The air is thick with tension and blame. Mrs. Chen is furious, her voice sharp with fear and anger. She is pointing fingers, accusing Mrs. Wen of being careless, of almost hurting Xiaoling and the babies. How could you be so reckless? Did you even think about what could have happened? She yells, her face flushed. Mrs. Wen isn't backing down. She is defensive, hurt, and maybe a little guilty. It was an accident. I would never intentionally harm my own grandchildren. You think I wanted this to happen? She retorts, her voice trembling. The argument escalates quickly. It is no longer just about the peanuts. It is about everything: different parenting philosophy, old rivalries, and the stress of the impending arrivals. They rage, dredging up old grievances, each word a jab at the other. This is just like you, always thinking you know best, one says. And you're always so controlling, treating Xiaoling like she's a child. The other fires back. It is a storm of accusations, and poor Xiaoling is caught right in the middle, trying to play peacemaker. She is begging them to stop, her voice barely a whisper against their shouting. Please stop fighting. It is not helping anyone. But they race so caught up in their anger, they barely hear her. Just as the fight reaches its peak, something happens that changes everything. Xiaoling, who has been looking increasingly pale and exhausted, suddenly sways. Her face goes white, her eyes roll back, and she collapses. She just faints, right there on the floor. The shouting stops instantly. The silence that follows is deafening, broken. Only by the thud of her fall, for a split second, both mothers just freeze, their faces a mask of pure shock and horror. The anger, the pride, the argument, it all vanishes in an instant. Then, pure instinct takes over. Mrs. Chen and Mrs. Wen rush to Xiaoling's side simultaneously. All the hostility between them is gone, replaced by a shared primal fear for Xiaoling and the babies. Xiaoling, Xiaoling, can you hear me? Mrs. Chen cries out, gently shaking her shoulder. Mrs. Wang is already on the phone with the doctor, her voice frantic but clear. My daughter-in-law fainted. She is pregnant with twins. They work together seamlessly, one checking her pulse, the other getting the pillow, their movements perfectly synchronized without a single word exchanged. In that moment of crisis, they are not rivals. They are a team. They are grandmothers, united by their love for their family. Thankfully, Xiaoling comes to after a few moments. She is weak and disoriented, but she is okay. The doctor on the phone explains it as likely just exhaustion from the pregnancy, especially with twins, combined with the stress of the argument. He advises rest in a calm environment. As Xiaoling rests on the sofa, the two mothers look at each other. The anger is gone, replaced by shame and regret. They see the pale, exhausted face of their daughter-in-law, and it hits them like a ton of bricks. They see the real-life consequences of their fighting. It wasn't about winning an argument. It was about the well-being of Xiaoling and the precious lives she is carrying. The scare was the wake-up call they desperately needed. A long, heavy silence hangs in the air. Finally, Mrs. Chen breaks it at her voice soft and full of remorse. I'm sorry, she says, looking directly at Mrs. Wang. I was so scared, and I took it out on you. It wasn't your fault. Tears well up in Mrs. Wang's eyes as she shakes her head. No, I'm the one who should be sorry. I should have been more careful. All that matters is that Xiaoling and the babies are okay. We can't do this to her. We have to do better. It is a powerful, honest moment. They finally understand that their rivalry is petty and destructive. The only way forward is to work together, to be a united front for the family that's about to get bigger. They realize their real priority isn't being right. It is being there for their children. To seal this newfound truce, they decide to do something together. They head into the kitchen, the former battleground, and decide to cook a nutritious meal for Xiaoling. This time, there's no competition. They share ingredients. They discuss the recipe. They even laugh a little. Mrs. Wen shows Mrs. Chen a trick for chopping vegetables, and Mrs. Chen shares her secret for making the perfect broth. They are not just cooking a meal. They are rebuilding their relationship, ingredient by ingredient. It's a quiet, beautiful scene of reconciliation. As they work side by side, you can feel the warmth returning to the home. The kitchen, once a place of conflict, is now filled with the gentle sounds of cooperation and the aroma of healing. Later, they bring the food to Xiaoling, who is resting. They sit with her, one on each side, fussing over her, making sure she's comfortable. They talk, not as adversaries, but as a family. They apologize to Xiaoling for putting her through so much stress. Xiaoling, seeing her two mothers finally getting along, smiles, a genuine, happy smile. She reaches out and takes both of their hands. "This is all I ever wanted," she says, her voice filled with emotion, "for us to be a family." In that moment, holding hands, the three women share a profound emotional bond. It is a truly touching scene, a promise of a new, more peaceful beginning. They finally become the support system that Xiaoling needs and deserves. Everything seems perfect. The conflict is resolved. The family is united, and a sense of peace has settled over the house. Xiaoling is sipping her soup, looking happy and content. The two grandmothers are watching her with adoring eyes, dreaming of the future. The atmosphere is calm and hopeful, and just when you think you can finally relax and enjoy the happy ending, Xiaoling's eyes suddenly go wide. She gasps, a sharp intake of breath. She looks down, and then back at her mothers-in-law, a look of shock and panic on her face. A small puddle begins to form on the sofa beneath her. She clutches her belly and says the one thing that will throw everything into chaos all over again: "My water just broke." And that's where the episode ends. A massive cliffhanger. The babies are coming, and they're coming now. What a whirlwind! From a huge fight to a medical scare to a heartfelt reconciliation. And now, labor. They just made peace, and now they're about to face their biggest challenge yet. Will they be able to handle the pressure? Let me know your predictions for the next episode in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. The call came in the middle of the night. It was my dad, his voice trembling with an excitement I hadn't heard in years. "Jieming, it's time. Xiaoling's at the hospital." I barely remember throwing on my clothes, grabbing my keys, and speeding over. The whole car ride was a blur of streetlights and prayers. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would burst right out of my chest. I think my parents beat me there, because when I arrived, the entire family was already pacing the waiting room floor. My mom, Xiaoling's mom, my dad, her dad. Everyone was a bundle of nerves and anticipation. The air was thick with it. This heavy, hopeful silence broken only by the squeak of our shoes on the polished floor. Hours felt like days. We drank stale coffee. We made small talk that trailed off into nothing. We stared at the clock on the wall, watching the seconds tick by with agonizing slowness. Every time a nurse walked past, all our heads would snap up in unison. Finally, the door to the delivery ward swung open, and the doctor, smiling, walked towards us. "Congratulations," he said, and the whole world seemed to hold its breath. "You have a healthy baby boy and a healthy baby girl." The words hung in the air for a moment, and then the waiting room erupted, not in shouts, but in something far more profound. My mom was the first to break. She just covered her face with her hands and started sobbing. Not sad tears, but tears of pure, unadulterated joy. Then Xiaoling's mom followed, hugging my mom tightly as they both cried on each other's shoulders. My dad, ever the stoic one, had a glistening in his eyes as he clapped Xiaoling's dad on the back, who was openly weeping, a huge grin plastered on his face. Seeing our parents, these two families now truly one, sharing this moment of overwhelming happiness. It was everything. I felt my own eyes welling up. This was it. This was the moment our lives changed forever. Soon, they led us in to see them, and there she was, my incredible Xiaoling, looking exhausted but absolutely radiant. In her arms, swaddled in blankets, were the two tiniest, most perfect human beings I had ever seen. One in a pink hat, one in a blue one, our son and our daughter. I leaned down and kissed Xiaoling, whispering, "You did it. You were amazing." She just smiled, a tired but triumphant smile. The room was filled with a gentle, reverent "Ah." Our parents crowded around, their earlier tears replaced by soft cooes and whispered blessings. Of course, the quiet didn't last long. The moment we got the all clear that mom and baby were settling in, the great gift competition began. My dad, beaming with pride, declared he was heading out to buy the grandest, most educational toys a baby could ever want. Not to be outdone, Xiaoling Estat immediately countered, "Nonsense. They need the softest, most luxurious baby clothes money can buy. Only the best for my grandchildren." They both dashed off, practically racing each other out the door, their friendly rivalry in full swing. We all just laughed. It was their way of showing love, this crazy, competitive showering of affection. Meanwhile, back in the room, a different kind of battle was brewing. My mom and Xiaoping's mom were standing by the bassinets, engaged in a loving, whispered negotiation. "Let me hold him first," my mom would plead. "I just want to feel his little fingers." Xiaoling's mom would gently retort, "But I haven't held the little princess yet. Just for a minute." They went back and forth, their hands hovering over the babies, their faces alight with the grandmother's love. It was so sweet and funny to watch. Xiaoling and I just looked at each other and smiled. This was our family, a little loud, a little crazy, but overflowing with so much love it felt like the room could barely contain it. Later that evening, after the grandparents had finally gone home to get some rest, I sat by Xiaoling's bedside, holding our daughter while she held our son. The hospital room was quiet, filled only with the soft breathing of our newborns. Looking at their tiny, peaceful faces, I thought about the journey that brought us here. From our first date to the awkward family introductions, the arguments, the laughter, the proposal, the wedding. All of it had led to this perfect, quiet moment. We weren't just Jieming and Xiaoling anymore. We were a family, a complete, messy, beautiful family. I looked at Xiaoling, my amazing wife, the mother of my children, and my heart felt so full I thought it might burst. "I love you," I whispered. "So much." She looked back at me, her eyes shining. "I love you too." In that moment, everything felt right. The world outside, with all its noise and complications, simply faded away. There was only us, the four of us, the beginning of our new chapter. As I sat there, just soaking it all in, my phone buzzed. In my pocket. I almost ignored it, not wanting to break the spell, but something made me look. It was a call from my brother, Jiejun. That was strange. He knew where I was, what was happening. He wouldn't call unless it was important. I picked up the phone and stepped quietly out into the hallway. "Jiejun, is everything okay?" I asked, my voice low. There was a pause on the other end of the line, a heavy silence that immediately put me on edge. Then his voice came, strained and serious. "Jieming," he said, "we need to talk. I have something I need to tell you." Somber, hopeful music begins and fades into the background. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel. Today, we're diving deep into episode 29, titled Return Redemption. This episode was an absolute emotional roller coaster, packed with moments that had us holding our breath. So, let's get right into it. The episode opens with a scene we've all been waiting for: Jiejun's return. After a long and difficult journey through rehab, he's finally back. But this isn't the same Jiejun we knew. He looks healthier, clearer, and there's a newfound strength in his eyes. He gathers the family, and the tension is so thick you could cut it with a knife. What's he going to say? Is this just another empty promise? Then he drops the first bombshell. He announces that he's not just clean. He's now working as a counselor at the very same rehab center that helped him. He wants to use his own painful experiences to guide others away from the path he once walked. This is a huge step. It's not just about staying sober. It's about actively building a new life, a life of purpose and service. It shows a level of commitment we haven't seen from him before. He is turning his greatest weakness into his greatest strength. The most powerful moment comes next. With tears in his eyes, Jiejun looks at each family member and delivers a heartfelt apology. He acknowledges the pain, the betrayal, and the chaos he caused. He doesn't make excuses. He owns every bit of his past. He then promises to repay every cent he owes. Not through shortcuts or schemes, but through honest, hard work at his new job. This is the redemption part of the episode's title. It's about making amends not just with words, but with actions. How does the family react? It's complicated. You can see the relief on their faces, the flicker of hope that they might finally have their son and brother back for good. They forgive him, but it's a cautious forgiveness. The wounds are deep, and trust isn't something that can be rebuilt overnight. They're willing to give him a chance, but they're watching, waiting to see if this change is real and lasting. This dynamic is so realistic. Forgiveness is a process, not a single event. And the show portrays this beautifully. Just as we're processing this emotional family reunion, the story throws a massive curveball. The doorbell rings, and in walks Xiaoling. But she's not alone. By her side is her new boyfriend, who is a foreigner. The entire family is stunned into silence. You can see a million questions flashing in their eyes. Who is this man? Where did he come from? How long has this been going on? The camera focuses on Xiaoling's mother, and her reaction is visceral. It's a mix of shock, confusion, and maybe even a hint of disapproval. Her expression says it all. In her mind, she's probably running through a dozen different scenarios, none of them good. This is a very traditional family, and Xiaoling bringing home a foreign partner without any warning is a major disruption to their world. The cultural clash is immediately apparent and sets the stage for some serious family drama. But Xiaoling isn't finished dropping bombshells. With a nervous but determined look on her face, she makes another announcement that sends shockwaves through the room. She declares that she and her boyfriend are getting married. Just like that. No long engagement, no big family discussion. She is getting married. The room, which was just beginning to heal from Jiejun's return, is now thrown back into chaos. This raises so many questions. Is she rushing into this? Is she running away from something? Or is this true love? Her parents are clearly overwhelmed. First, they have to process their son's recovery and new life path. And now their daughter is announcing a sudden marriage to a man they've never met. It's too much, too fast. The tension skyrockets as they struggle to comprehend the sudden turn of events. And just when you think the episode can't possibly deliver any more drama, it hits us with the final, gut-punching cliffhanger. As the family is reeling from Xiaoling's news, a subtle calendar shot or a quiet line of dialogue reminds us of the date. It's Jieming and Xiaoling's wedding anniversary. In the midst of all this turmoil, this return and this shocking announcement, a date that should be about celebrating their love and commitment, is completely overshadowed. This is such a brilliant and heartbreaking way to end the episode. Jieming and Xiaoling, the steady pillars of the family, are forgotten in the storm. Will this create a rift between them? Will they feel resentful that their special day was hijacked by family drama? It leaves us hanging, worried not just about Jiejun's recovery and Xiaoling's sudden marriage, but about the stability of the one relationship that seemed unshakable. What a masterful setup for the next episode. So, what do you all think? Is Jiejun's change for real this time? What are your thoughts on Xiaoling's surprise engagement? And how do you think this will affect Jieming and Xiaoling's relationship? Let me know all your theories and reactions in the comments below. I can't wait to read what you have to say. If you enjoyed this breakdown, please give this video a thumbs up and make sure you are subscribed to the channel with notifications turned on so you don't miss our next deep dive. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. A year had passed in the blink of an eye. Looking back, it feels like a dream. Our little apartment, Once just a space for two is now bursting with life. My parents and Xiaoling's parents are all living with us. At first, I was worried. So many people, so many different habits all crammed under one roof. I imagined arguments, misunderstandings, maybe even a full-blown family war. But life has a funny way of surprising you. Every morning, I wake up to the sound of my father and my father-in-law laughing as they head out for their morning walk. They've become inseparable, like brothers they never had. They compete over who can walk more steps, who can do more push-ups at the park. They share stories, complain about us kids, and plan their next fishing trip. Seeing them together, their faces lit up with genuine friendship, fills my heart with a warmth I can't quite describe. They used to be two strangers, brought together by our marriage. Now they raise family in the truest sense of the word. And it's not just the dads. My mom and my mother-in-law, who I thought would be the biggest challenge, have formed an incredible partnership. They started a small food stall near our neighborhood. My mom makes her famous savory pancakes, and my mother-in-law sells her sweet, fragrant soups. They bicker over whose recipe is better. But it's always with a smile. They cover for each other when one isn't feeling well. They gossip while prepping ingredients, and they celebrate every little success together. They've found a new purpose, a new sense of independence, and most importantly, a deep and supportive friendship. They raise not just mothers-in-law. They raise business partners, confidants, and pillars of strength for each other. Remember my brother Jieming? He is doing great. He has been seeing a nurse he met at the hospital during one of his checkups. She is kind, patient, and sees him for the wonderful person he is. He is more confident now, more optimistic about the future. He even started taking an online course in graphic design. It is amazing to see him so happy and motivated. He visits us every weekend, and he's a fantastic uncle. He's the one who can always make the twins giggle, even when they're being fussy. And my sister, Xiaoling, is living her own adventure. She got married last spring and moved abroad with her husband. We video call all the time. She shows me her new city, tells me about her job, and shares stories about adapting to a new culture. She is so happy, so full of life. I miss her like crazy, but seeing her thrive and build a life she loves brings me so much joy. She is planning to visit next year, and we're already counting down the days. Our family keeps growing, spreading across the globe, but our connection remains as strong as ever. But the real agents of chaos and joy in our home are the twins. They started walking a few months ago, and our quiet apartment had been transformed into a playground. One minute they're giggling and chasing each other around the living room. The next they're pulling all the pots and pans out of the kitchen cupboards. It is exhausting, it is messy, and it is absolutely wonderful. Every day is a new discovery, a new milestone. Their first steps, their first words are Dada, Mama. Every time they run into our arms, all the stress of the day just melts away. They are the glue that holds our chaotic, beautiful family together. Their laughter is the soundtrack of our home. The other evening, Xiaoling and I were standing on the balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Inside, we could hear the lively chatter of our parents discussing dinner, the sound of the TV, and the happy squeals of the twins as Jieming chased them around. Our two little boys were toddling between their grandfathers, who were playfully arguing over who got to hold them next. Our mothers were in the kitchen, their laughter mixing with the delicious aroma of food. In that perfect moment, with the warm glow of the setting sun on our faces, Xiaoling leaned her head on my shoulder. She whispered, "Remember when we were worried about how we would manage to home the sets of parents?" I smiled, pulling her closer. "Yeah," I said, "I remember." We looked at the scene unfolding before us, this noisy, loving, chaotic mix of people. It wasn't two separate families anymore. It was just one, our home. We started this journey thinking that family, with all its obligations and responsibilities, could be a burden. We were afraid it would hold us back. that we would lose ourselves in trying to please everyone. But we were wrong, so wrong. Looking at our big, messy, wonderful family, I realized something profound. Family isn't the anchor that weighs you down. It is the sail that catches the wind and helps you move forward. It is the strength you didn't know you had, the support that lifts you up when you fall, and the love that makes every single day worthwhile. This is our home. This is our strength. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey to the home. It has been an incredible experience sharing this story with all of you. Your support has meant the world to us. If our story resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe for more content. Until next time, take care.